Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our council meeting on the 19th of June. Please stand with me for a opening karakia. Right, thank you very much. We have no apologies today, but I do have Councillor Goff on Zoom as well as Councillor Harrison Hunt. Okay, we have no declarations of interest, so I'll move on to item 3, public participation. First up, we'll hear from Bob Huffman, who will speak about Kaingiora and the council's building codes. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Margaret, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you and to the members of the council.
Yeah, take care.
Over the past fortnight, have tried to contact you several times through the email, but when I've tried to send the emails, it has been frozen. My emails have been frozen. And quite candidly, I'll tell you that I suspect that it is a New Zealand government entity that is responsible for that freezing of my emails. That entity is the New Zealand Government Communications Security Bureau, who has done that in the past. I sent an email on the 25th of May to yourself and to all your councillors. Is there anyone who did not receive my email on the 20 that sent on the 25th? Did you receive it? You didn't receive it. Okay. Then thank you for that acknowledgement. Okay, everyone else has received it, but I have had no reply. And if you want a copy of it, I have a copy here that I can provide you, Councillor Kendrick, after the meeting. I only have one copy now, but I can do that after the meeting. Because my emails have been blocked, yesterday I came to my council offices and downstairs the staff was very considerate and allowed me to write a letter in ink, which cannot be blocked by the Government Communications Security Bureau. And so this is to Amy Davidson, who's been handling this matter. Good afternoon, Ms. Davidson. In response to your recent email, I now write, with reference to the Local Government Official Information Act and the provisions therein, I request that you provide me with a copy of the email that was sent to the Canterbury Regional Offices of Kaingiora by a member of your CCC staff. I would have thought that, as a matter of courtesy, I would have been copied into that correspondence, and herewith request any future correspondence from Christchurch City Council or CCC staff sent to any officer of Kaingiora be with a CC or copy to me when the subject of that correspondence has to do with me. I think that's completely reasonable. Right. These are the documents relating to the building at 218 Stanmore Road, the plumbing, and this is from your Regulatory Services Department downstairs, and I appreciate their assistance about 3 weeks ago. They're very helpful, and I told him what the problem was, and I showed him the letters that I had sent to Andrew McKenzie, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Kaingiora, Chris Bishop, who is the Minister of Housing, and Christopher Luxon. So they gave me these, which shows that the building is in compliance, the plumbing is in compliance. You will have seen, everyone except for Mr. Skendrick will have seen the photographs of the photographs of my shower cubicle, which has been flooded with raw sewage. I'm not happy about that. I accept that it's the malicious and deliberate actions, wrongful actions of my upstairs neighbor. Still, the building is in compliance with regulations. And so this allows that to happen. And I mean, who would do stuff like this? Who would do stuff like this? This is a New Zealander. He's my neighbor. You know, I am really irate about this. Anyway, I've been dealing with Kaingora for the first instance, I guess, was in May of 2023, the first time that the flooding occurred. And the next time was in November of 2023. And this is the sequence of correspondence. And I sent this, actually, I didn't send this to you in your in the letter of the 25th, but I sent it to Amy Davidson. She has a copy of it. And so if any of you want a copy of it, this is the correspondence that I've had with Liz Krause, who is the regional director of Kaingora in Canterbury, or in South Island as well. So you're welcome to get a copy of that from Miss Davidson. She will have that somewhere on her file. I don't know if any of you have seen it or not. But basically, that's what I have to say. And what is really concerning now is that my communication with you is being blocked by the New Zealand government. I mean, this is just, you know, free and frank conversation that should not be blocked. You know, I have a right to speak. I'm not using any profanity. I feel like it, but you know, I need to communicate with you, and I don't want to take up much time. So I just have one final statement to say, and that is, Mayor Monger and councillors of the Christchurch City Council, this issue is not going to vanish into the mist. You can count on it. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning.
Thank you very much, Bob. Good on you. Thank you. I will get. I'll talk to consortium. There's got to be something half simple here that's causing.
And Bob, I've got the emails now. Yanni sent them through. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. It's okay. Because we have, Bob, just to put you in the picture, Bob, we have Otatahi Housing Trust have a lot of houses built by consortium. There must be something half simple that is causing this grief. It can't be. It's got to be able to be fixable, surely.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Building code issue. It seems like it's a building code issue.
Thank you.
That's how the council. In my first email that I sent to council, I said, you know, you may ask how you're involved. Well, it's building code, and,
I'll look into it, man. Good on you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we will hear from Donald Gould, who will make a public forum about Life in Christchurch survey and the notice of motion regarding infrastructure delivery. He will also make a deputation regarding item 7, the Otakaro Avon Stormwater Management Plan. Don has 10 minutes. Thank you.
Morning, Your Worship. I thought I had 15, but I was told by staff I've got 15, but I'm trying to get through this in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So if you want to start the timer, let's see if I can achieve that. The Mayor has thankfully introduced the survey, so I won't even cover that. City Life survey. Folks, members, I received, one of you reached out to express that you'd received a number of complaints about this survey and asked if I'd completed it and had a look at it, which I hadn't, to be honest. I'd seen the reminder in my email a couple of times. So I did dive into it and reviewed it and had a few thoughts, and then I thought I'd reach out to a few other friends to also complete it and give me a bit of feedback. So today I've come here to present that. The survey, in my view, is not good. It's biased. It attempts to direct thinking rather than gathering thought. It's antagonistic in places. It shows poor attempt at social engineering. It's way too long. If you're of climate faith, you're going to love this survey. But if you're not, or you're on the fence, then you'll frankly fatigue quite quickly. It pulls the reputation of the council down, in my view. Moving on. Members, there's a variety of feedback on the screen. This presentation will be in the minutes, I'm sure, so I'm not going to labour this one. I'm just going to let you go and have a look at it, make up your own mind, review the survey. Motion of notice on infrastructure delivery working group. This one for me is timely. Thank you, Councillor Kewen, for bringing this to the table. My recent experience with a project that has shown issues with a couple of council policies on the table at present. I'm not going to go into that particular issue, but it aligns from my point of view. I urge members to support this motion today, if for no other reason to redraw staff attention and members' attention to our procurement policies. Look, members, I know that policies are sometimes very frustrating, and I've sat in meetings recently where staff have kind of expressed that they want to go one direction because it's just quicker and faster and easier than perhaps going down the right path, or at least what was a right path in my opinion. We create these policies for a reason, and then we go to actually execute them and we find them inconvenient, so we kind of try and work around them. Maybe we shouldn't do the policy in the first place if we're just not going to adhere to them. So this is timely. Moving on, the Atakaro Stormwater, I'm not making time, am I? The Atakaro Avon Stormwater Management Plan. My main message in my written submission was get on with it. My message today is to listen to the engaged public. You as a council spend too much time standing at an apple tree, looking up, wanting to pick every apple and starting with the ones at the top of the tree while ignoring the apples on the ground and the easy low-hanging fruit. I want you to focus on listening to and engaging with the key community members who are engaged with this issue. Actually, frankly, that's not me. But today you're going to hear from other members of the public who it very much is, who have extensive networks across the city and across the region. And if there is real reason for more community uprising and more community engaging, I trust those members of the public will actually bring that to your table. You don't need to spend all day foraging for it from people who don't really want to engage. And that's my lot.
Goodness gracious. Well done.
Thank you.
Is time for some questions, if anyone wants to ask Don any questions? Councillor Templeton, because we're on.
Kia ora, thanks for that, Don. Actually, just a point on your last point about focusing on those people who are already engaged with council. What we sometimes hear from people, and we do during lots of consultations, is that we actually don't reach out enough in our consultations and reach people who don't normally engage with council, and that we should be doing things in a much more engaging way rather than having the same residents talk to us all the time. What do you think about that?
Absolutely disagree with that position. I will concede, I used to be of that ilk. Absolutely. And you know that.
Yeah, which is why it was a change.
But one of the things that I've grown up and matured a little bit on this, I feel, maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I'll leave that. Yes, thank you. The reality is the biggest problem in engagement I believe we have in this city right now, we have two fundamental problems, Councillor. One is that people are scared of council. You are a very large, very, very toothed organisation. Is my presentation today going to compromise the consents that my friends have got on the table? Now, I don't think that any of you are going to answer yes to that, but I can tell you that my friends say they're concerned about speaking up because they're concerned about being cancelled. The other problem is as a community, we are like, well, Hayley's sitting there waiting to speak next. She speaks beautifully, articulately. I'll just let her speak for me. I'm not as good as she is. I don't speak as eloquently. I don't speak as well. I don't know as much about the topic as she does. So it's not really my place to step up. Vicky Buck challenged me for a long time on these issues. She said, Don, on social media, if you feel strongly about the issue, come and make a deputation, come and make a public forum. And I was like, well, you guys are really important. I don't think I'm not important enough to be addressing you. Or am I?
Yeah.
Clearly my view has changed on that. But I think that the general public, many of them, I certainly did, I felt like this is not my place to speak.
Yeah. So, but you've changed your mind on that, and I'm wondering if there's a role then that you can play in encouraging others to do the same and actually tell people it's not as bad as you think.
Yes, absolutely there is. But that in some respects needs to come with some endorsement. And I would suggest to all of you as members, when you see members of the public actually stepping up, that you do encourage that. And yes, I will take that comment and run with it.
Thank you.
Councillor Scandrett.
Yeah, look, we nationally with local bodies, we spend a lot of, government spends a huge amount of money for the local elections, trying to get everybody to vote. On average, it's about 42%. There are a lot of people that are just too busy, or they kind of think, okay, I've got an opinion, but generally we're going in the right direction, or don't believe in something, or just they're busy. So with the feedback we get, what do you think your opinion of us using it is? Because that's, we're not going to get 100% feedback on everything because people are busy. But what do you think with the information that we get from those who choose to make contact with us? What do you think of your opinion on that?
Councillor, without appearing rude, I actually thought about a question similar to this morning, so I'm going to answer that this way. Members, do you think that the councillor's question was rude, A, B, very rude, C, or extremely rude, or D, a collection of all of the above? Do you notice how in my question, and I apologise for the insinuation, but do you notice in my question how I have framed the question? On my YouTube channel, I posted a video from Yes Prime Minister. It's a TV show from the late 70s, 80s about national service. And Sir Humphreys presents two different ways of framing 5 questions to get you to either say, yes, national service is great, or no, national service is terrible. I framed a question in such a way that I backed all of you into a corner to simply, and I know all of you would, if you had to choose an answer, you would likely choose the answer that minimises the least amount of offence, but then allows me to pigeonhole you all as regarding the member's question as offensive. And then you will lead on to that political argy-bargy to suggest that the member is consistently offensive, using this narrative that I've created in a survey. And this is what I was getting at in this slide, members, is that these questions in some of these things, they're not well thought out. Now, I have quite a bit of experience with surveys and with the concept of surveys. I remember engaging through Internet New Zealand about 20 odd years ago and saying, why the hell are we asking survey questions? And the team came back to me at the time and they said, look, surveys aren't just about gathering responses. They're also about making people stop and consider those issues. And this survey on the climate and city life, the climate change initiative, definitely does that. But you have to be careful to not drive people away from the table. You'll see from the responses that I had people actually say, yes, they'd looked at it and they're not doing it. I've had other people say to me, yes, they receive our surveys. Thank you, timer. Subtle. I've had other people say, yes, they've received the surveys, etc. And they're not doing any more surveys because the last survey they did burnt them off.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Don. That's a good presentation. Thank you. I actually went down the survey about a week ago, and some of the things I certainly agree with you. In the end, I lost interest because it was sort of wasn't me, but that's me. So thank you very much.
How is your information going to be used, Your Worship? How are you going to be presented? Because I guarantee you, Your Worship, even if you didn't finish the survey, that system is also collecting the amount of information that you did submit, even though you didn't get to the end.
Thank you very much.
Equally a concern.
Good on you. Thank you, bud. Okay, Next, we're into deputations now. Christchurch International Airport. I'd like to welcome Jess, who is here to speak on behalf of Christchurch International Airport regarding item 7. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou, thank you all. So my name is Jesse Amer and I am the Senior Environment and Planning Advisor here at Christchurch International Airport. And this is my colleague Felicity Hayman, who is the Environment and Planning Manager. And as his honour said, today we are here to speak on behalf of the airport in support of the Otakaro Avon Stormwater Management Plan. So Christchurch International Airport, as I'm sure you're aware, is the largest airport in the South Island and the second largest in New Zealand. We're nationally significant infrastructure and a key transport, employment and energy node for Canterbury. Just under 7 million passengers pass through our airport each year and over 9,000 people are employed on the airport's campus. We're also a critical freight hub. The airport's interests within the Otokaikino Avon catchment relates to the consideration of bird strike in the planning and specific design of stormwater management basins. Bird strike is when a bird or a flock of birds collides with an aircraft, which, as I'm sure you can appreciate, can damage an aircraft and in many instances forces an emergency landing. The ongoing management of bird strike risk in this catchment is of crucial importance to the safe operation of Christchurch Airport, with large parts of this catchment being within the flight paths where planes and birds share airspace. Therefore, the creation of new large bodies of water may attract new high-risk species within this area, with these basins acting as an attractive new home or halfway hotel. So this stormwater management plan is an important tool to drive, firstly, awareness of bird strike risk within the community, and then also support how this risk can be mitigated through the planning and design of new stormwater basins. Fundamentally, the airport has really appreciated the ongoing dialogue that we've had with the council through this plan, including the recognition of bird strike in other stormwater management plans that have been put through recently. And we're in particular supportive of bird strike risk management as it is recorded in this plan. And in this plan, that includes both a map and description of the bird strike management areas in this catchment. And we've also worked with council to include stormwater basin design guidelines that take bird strike management into account in the design of those basins. So why are we here today? The sort of primary reason is to thank the council and Paul Dixon and his team in particular for the positive engagement that we've had on the stormwater management plan. Incorporating bird strike risk into these documents is making a difference both within the council and within people coming to the airport. And so there's been recently a lot of work with parties to ensure that their stormwater infrastructure is designed in a way that also mitigates any bird strike risk. So this is really awesome. And continuing on this trajectory is really important. In relation to this plan, we continue to advocate for two things. Firstly, just a couple of brief references to bird strike within the front end of the plan, so this issue is clearly and easily communicated to any users of this document. And secondly, an inclusion of an action plan within the document requiring council to keep records of all stormwater basins constructed within this catchment and records shared between the council and the airport. And we'll continue to work with Paul and his team to achieve these outcomes outside of this process. So the airport would like to thank you all for your time and the opportunity to speak to you today, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Absolutely, and thank you very much. Councillor Kewen.
Yeah, welcome and thank you for your deputation. So just a couple of questions on, is anyone doing work on species risk, i.e. different birds fly at different heights, and if some are in flight paths, and the one species that's been in the news recently is the dreaded Canadian geese. So A, is someone doing work on species, and what are the risk species, and then what are their habitats that are encouraged or discouraged in flight paths?
Yes, so the airport...
Rather than just saying all birds. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So there is we do have expert advice on the types of birds. So there are a few high-risk species, and obviously this is focused on stormwater, but there are other land uses that attract high-risk species, and so our focus is primarily on those high-risk species. And
do you have a hierarchy?
Yes, there is a hierarchy. Yes.
Who's at the top?
So Canada geese are at the top.
It's Canada geese, pigeon, plovers.
Right. Okay. And so on that, do you think the airport might be interested in helping fund culls of Canada geese?
I think our wildlife manager is actually working with the council and with a large group of stakeholders on the management of Canadian geese. We do a fair bit of work on the airport and with our closest neighbours on management of Canadian geese.
Right.
But if you want to reach out outside of this, we can have a chat and see what.
Because we're looking for a festival sponsor for the Cook the Goose festival starting next year. We're going to invite chefs to take in all these culled geese and cook them up for people as a festival, and there'll be comedy attached.
That's a good idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else with a question? Thank you very much, Jessie. Pauline, sorry.
Just scrolling through trying to find it, but did I read that you are not quite in agreement with the council around the size and positioning of the basins? Or are you fine with what we're planning?
This is more to do with the... Are you talking about a specific basin within the catchment?
Yeah.
So the engagement and the purpose of the management plan is to highlight where there's areas where stormwater basins might be built either by council or by developers, and put forward a design guide around some parameters that will help manage bird strike risk.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a placeholder to enable anyone who's building a stormwater basin to come in to understand what the parameters are to help manage that bird strike risk, and to have a conversation with the airport on how we might manage that together and what the overall risk picture looks like. Because one of the main things about bird strike risk management is understanding what are our high risk species birds, how do they behave, and how does any proposed change in the existing environment interact with their behaviour. So if we have an existing basin over here, say north of the Waimakariri, and then we have someone who's proposing to put a large basin slightly south of the Waimakariri River and maybe on the other side of the runway, what does that mean for the behaviour of birds, and will it encourage birds to fly over the flight path? And if that's the case, then we would want to work with the developer to understand what some mitigation options were.
And you're quite happy that council's working with you on that proposal? And the data that you want recorded around the basins is all about birds, numbers of birds and species?
It's more of a placeholder to start to make developers enable awareness of the issue, so that project planning can happen really early on. Because in essence, the airport just wants to work with our neighbours to ensure that any changes in land uses, the risk of bird strike risk is understood and managed, and whether that is we work with the landowner around more site inspections, more culling events, or if we get in early enough, how can we understand and balance stormwater management requirements. Also understanding that from a existing environment perspective, the areas northeast of the airport have actually some challenging underlying groundwater conditions, so getting rid of water is actually quite hard. So all of those things need to be balanced, and there needs to be a solution that enables development to happen but also manages that risk to aircraft.
And have you talked to council about gathering that data, and is there an issue with resource to do that? And if so, would you be prepared to partner?
So we collect the data ourselves at the moment. And I think in the past, our wildlife officers have worked with the council. So there is an element of working together that goes on. Yeah.
That's good
Thank
to know.
you. And lastly, Councillor Barber, please.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I was just wondering if you could give us a bit of context on bird strikes in the last 5 or 10 years. Do you have any sort of data on that? Yeah.
We do actually. So we have quite an extensive wildlife management team that do work on airport and off airport, and collect data on bird species that are seen, if they're a potential risk, if they are a risk. Every single bird strike or near miss also gets reported. So there's a process with CAA and with all the airlines around reporting that. I don't have the statistics on the top of my head, sorry, but we do have all of that information.
Yeah.
And most of the airports across New Zealand do the same.
Yeah. Do you have a vague idea? Have there been any strikes in the last 5 to 10 years?
Yes, definitely.
There has been.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Strikes actually happen more regularly than the
Wow.
public would realise. If you see a strike that's reached the media, or has happened what happened in Queenstown earlier this week, that's there's generally been quite a few other ones that have happened that don't get so much media attention.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in. That's
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Okie doke. So now we have Hayley from Avanotakaroa Network who will speak regarding item 7.
Sit here and I can control the thing. Morena, Mr Mayor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to verbally speak on item 7 of today's meeting. So anyway, I'll kick into it. So the Avon Takaro River Corridor catchment is actually fairly large and significant. It takes up almost 2/3 of the urban environment in Christchurch, and there's a lot of talk about the red zone and the great work that's going on there to help with our stormwater systems. But as you can see, the red zone is actually only a small component of our catchment, and we're dealing with a lot of urban runoff into our river system. So I'll just flick through this pretty quickly. So you can see that there's a lot of infrastructure work happening in the red zone, but this stormwater management plan is really much focused on the upper catchment, and it doesn't hold a lot of infrastructure components. It's all been pushed out to about 2030, 2031. A lot of what we see in this management plan is to satisfy the global consent, and it really relies on action at source, and I'll get into that in a little bit to talk about that some more. So, so when we look at it in the bigger picture, sorry, that slide's a bit off, we've got to put what we believe is a bit of a disconnect between the great work that's going on in the red zone and the wider catchment in terms of connecting the stormwater management plan up to that work, and also, as I've mentioned, around really looking at what are the problems here, and working at source can be really challenging, and so organisations like ours, or Split 2, are doing our bit. I didn't bring rubbish in today, thankfully, but we are actually up to 8 tonnes of rubbish out of the river. And we're still not really seeing a significant shift from the old rubbish to the new rubbish. And we're also, as I did in my long-term plan submission, we're doing a lot of work ourselves around at-source work. And we're not the only ones. There's lots of organisations across this catchment that are. But I guess what I want to say is that we can do all we like. And this was a video taken 3 weeks ago near Hanson's Lane, to the stream coming out of there. And that is a regular occurrence for us. We're always flagging stuff coming out of the pipes. So we can work really hard, and it's quite disappointing at times. We're working hard out there to clean up our river, and then we have one event that then just takes away all of our work. So I guess in short, I'm going to be real quick so I can get questions. In short, we can do all of this work, but if we don't actually address the problems, then we're not going to get anywhere as a city, and our river is really important to our city. So we need to do better. We need to, and I also want to say before I do this, before I criticise, I want to say that the staff have done a wonderful job in writing this plan, and it is actually fundamentally a good plan. What is missing is a joined up approach between the red zone and the rest of the catchment, an approach between the council and ECAN on actually fining people and catching the people that are actually putting stuff into our river, on a regular occurrence. This is a weekly thing that we find ourselves. So if we're seeing it weekly, what is actually happening? We need to really work and figure out how we can work either with the government or bring investment forward in some of that big infrastructure work that needs to happen up catchment. And we need to understand that the Community Waterways Partnership was actually set up to help with this global consent. So the Community Waterways Partner really is the vehicle to help with the at-source work. So it's the vehicle, it's the people that come together, and we have a really great steering group with the Community Waterways Partnership. We've got all of the key community groups, ECAN, the council, we all sit around a table regularly working on this work, but it's under-resourced. So we need to see some resources put into the Community Waterways Partnership so that we can at least help for now, between now and when we can get some money and infrastructure to help deliver messaging, compliance, and some of the actions that are housed in the stormwater management plan. And finally, I'd really love for you to see work with maybe the Department of Justice, and maybe we could 501 the geese back to Canada. That would be awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Righto, thank you very much. Councillor Barber, please.
Thanks, Hayley, and thanks for the work that your group does. It's fantastic. As someone who's kayaked all the way down the river from right up Fendleton Way, could you give us a bit of context on your assessment of the two parts of the river? So I'm going to divide it up from the red zone down, and from sort of the Fendleton area down to there. Just out of 10, the state of the river, 1 being atrocious, 10 being pristine.
In my opinion,
Yeah.
all of it is a 9.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say, actually, apart from the central city, where everything's been, where the water was actually stopped and all the rocks polished,
Yeah.
and it's looking great. Everything else on either side of that, it's not great.
Yeah.
We're facing a tipping point with our river, and if we don't do something about it, it's going to be really hard to recover from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I'm trying to say about the red zone work's great because it's $300 million of infrastructure that's going to help cleanse the urban environment. That's going to be really hard to do in the upper catchment, and I understand that. And I understand that we need to look at the source work and start tackling at source problems. But we've also got 27 pipes going into that river, and every time we have a big rain event, those pipes are opened up to freely flow whatever crap goes in there. So until we address that and have systems in place that can fix that water quality before it goes into the river, we're really pushing an uphill battle, really. Yeah.
Yeah, just a follow-up question. So in terms of those pipes, what do you think would be a good solution to improve the quality of the water coming out of those pipes?
I think we need to work harder on compliance. So we need to make it known to the industry. And it's not just industry, it's personal properties who are recklessly tipping their shit down the drain. And it's going straight into our waterway. Yeah. So getting people to understand that, clean your brushes and your sinks, or at least it goes through a treatment system, not tip it out on your street where it goes straight into our stormwater network. So there's a lot of work around messaging, and that's where the Community Waterways Partnership can come in, because we're working together collaboratively, not just in silos, and we can actually start working on sending out the same messaging and getting the messaging across the city to the public, because at the end of the day, it's the urban environment that's creating this problem,
And just one more question. I've noticed when getting into my kayak up in Fendleton that the mud in the creek is really deep. It's knee height. Is there a solution to that, to improving that?
Unfortunately, we sit on a city that's the edge of the Waimakariri River, and in the past, before we came along, the Waimak used to cleanse Takaro, and so we don't have that luxury anymore because we'll have a flooded city every 100 years. So the silt is a problem, but silt can be rectified by, again, compliance, making sure developers are not allowing rubbish and stuff coming off their sites. The roading situation. Yeah, so there's things that we can do at source, but again, it's about where's the resources. There's no resources currently. This plan is amazing, and the guys, they've done a great job, and there's heaps of really great action around it, but we've got to resource that action to communicate the solutions. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cotter.
Yeah, thank you. Just that's a good segue into my question. So, when you attend the Community Water Partnership meetings, and you come up with ideas or ways to engage with people, because that's all about the at-source stuff through the community. What sort of resourcing, have you got any idea of what you're looking for in quantity, like how much
No, actually I don't, but I'm sure that the staff involved here could help with answering that question.
So you're picking up at the meeting that that's a great idea, but there's no money to deliver it.
Exactly, yeah. So we're kind of piecemealing comms and things together at the moment. And also it needs someone to drive it. So it really needs a staff member from the council or ECAN to be the driver.
I was going to say, is
Yeah.
there any staff?
Yeah, we do currently do. And we're
From ECAN or council?
from the council, but we've also got ECAN involved as well. So we've got a really good steering group that consists of staff from all of our key waterways organisations, ECAN, the council.
Yep.
But I guess it's now we've got a really great plan in place. It's right, okay, how do we action the plan without resources to do that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
to do a really good communication strategy, to do events and things that connect the general public with the idea around.
Yeah.
We're all responsible for. Is that answering your question? Not
Yes,
really.
no, it's great. Because what I'm sensing here too, Mayor Phil, is that we're not kind of getting the connection back from those meetings back through to council here.
Yep, you're
That
getting it
they
today.
Maybe they could come through the...
I'm also here today with my Community Waterways Partnership Steering Group hat on, saying that's the vehicle for which we can tackle the at-source challenges.
Yeah.
And we need to be resourced to do it.
Yeah.
So when you sign off this plan today, I'd really love for you to put in place some sort of motion to say that you'll commit to resourcing.
You're reading my mind.
Yeah. Excellent.
We can't commit, but we can at least propose.
We'll
Yeah.
at least discuss
Thank
it.
you.
because,
Thank you, Hayley. But please let us all not lose sight of the fact that the council along has spent a very big fortune on stormwater basins like Sparks Road, like what we can now do down at Waitaki Basin, because we've cleared the way for getting it past a wee hiccup that ECAN had. And there's a number of other ones, the ones that have been getting designed out at the very top of the sticks. And that's so they're all good. So we are attacking the big pipes where they come in. I know there's a lot of them, but we are doing something. We're not doing nothing. And we are also likes of that drain through Hagley Park has been tidied up, and there's a litter net, for want of a better word, catching things like that. So we are on it, but it's all with the help with the likes of what you're doing, Hayley, that is making it work well.
So just to summarise though, that's great and it's awesome, but if you don't fix the upstream, it's river water flows downstream.
It's done all its life. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in. Good to see you again.
Thanks.
Okey-doke. Next we'll hear from Colleen on behalf of Sustainable Ōtautahi Christchurch, who's also here to speak about item 7. Thank you.
Am I in the right place? Cool.
Yeah, spot on.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'll just put my glasses on. I'm watching this start time.
Don't panic. You're right.
The first thing I'd like to say is reflecting on what you've just been talking about litter. One of the best things that an urban area can do is sweep the streets more often. And I've been putting that into submissions for several years because it's something that I was made aware of quite some time ago, and I've been trying to push council. So it was really exciting when I saw the response from staff to all of our submissions that it was one of the things that was listed, sweeping the streets. So I really, really want to emphasise that I'd love to see that happening more often. I live in Wainoni. I live in Cuffs Road, between Pages Road and Wainoni Road. The Wainoni Road end is adjacent to Kerrs Reach, the Porritt Park Loop. That stretch of Wainoni Road must be one of the most littered streets in the city. I can walk my dog down 2 blocks and pick up a bag of rubbish. Virtually, like pretty regularly. I don't do it every time I take my dog out. I do it pretty regularly. So a couple of blocks, bag of rubbish into that rubbish bin, and then down into Avonside Drive, another bag of rubbish to drop off at the landing. If the streets were swept more regularly, it doesn't have to be all of the streets in Christchurch, but the ones that are critical, the ones that are adjacent to the rivers, the ones that are problem areas. I think that stretch of street, it's partly because of Eastgate, but we've also got a population who think that it's okay to dump rubbish out of cars. All sorts of rubbish just turns up on those main arterial roads. I would like to respond to the response to our submission a little bit more. I wasn't thinking of a booklet when I was talking about making people more aware and more enabled to do on-site solutions. A booklet might be great, and Genevieve, who I think is a full-time worker from council, who works with community, the Waterways Partnership, I'm sure she will put a booklet together if she's asked to do so. But that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about enabling people to actually do stuff on site. So maybe things like interest-free loans for rain harvesting tanks, maybe incentives for homeowners when they're changing their drive to move to a permeable surface rather than another asphalt or concrete surface, things like that. And I don't have all the answers about how council could enable that, but I would like you to think about it. But the main thing I want to talk about today is, in my submission, I talk about when you do nature-based solutions and designing them really well. We strongly at Sustainable Ōtautahi Christchurch and other organisations I talk to strongly support nature-based solutions. There's a multitude of advantages, but you do have to design them well. And when I'm talking about designing them well, I'm really talking about designing them for wildlife. We don't need any more dog parks around Christchurch. We don't need to make a new wetland into a dog park. And one of the things that we do at the moment is we put in a design which seems to be pretty standard. It's a circular ring road around the outside with a road through the middle. And if you want an example of it, one that I go to regularly is Clare Park. Do you all know Clare Park? Mm-hmm. Burwood Road. I think it was attached to the housing developments in that area. So it's between like QE2 Drive, Burwood Road. You go in and sort of down a little side road, and there's a constructed wetland in the back of a recreational park. That's the ring road around the outside and a road through the middle. There's Marsh Crake there. Marsh Crake. And a couple of years ago, my friends at Birds NZ told me there were marsh crake there. So for the last 2 years, I've been trying to go and see them. It was a bucket list bird for me. I've never seen a marsh crake. I'm never going to see one at Clare Park, I don't think. The last time I was there was a big ruckus. I was standing, looking out over the wetland, trying to spot the marsh crake. A big ruckus on the other side. All the birds in the middle of the wetland lifted. I go round the corner, this dog comes charging towards me. It's a woman who's going around the ring road with her, plastic throwy thing. She's using it as a racetrack for her dog. There is no way that the birds are going to be safe and secure and stress-free in a situation like that. And it doesn't have to be that way. There are some really, really, really good designs that can be used. And I want to channel my friend Celia King. She's in Birds NZ, she's also in the Estuary Trust, and she has travelled extensively. She's looked at exemplars, she's done a lot of research on this. And so she could actually, we have people who know about this stuff, and Celia and I would both like to say that if there's anyone other than councillors, if we could get together with anyone, any influence on this kind of design stuff, implementation of these things, we'd love to talk about those kinds of better designs that you could use. Now, I want to emphasise here that I'm actually a dog owner. I adore my dog. I'm dog mad, and I live a dog owner lifestyle, and I love Christchurch because of the fact that I can. It's a wonderful city to be a dog owner, but there are so many places already that I can take my dog and have a wonderful time. I don't need to go somewhere where we could have marsh crake and bittern. There are 600 bittern travelling around the country trying to find a safe place to live. And in Christchurch, we could provide that. We used to be a swamp. This used to be swamp. We have the capacity to have places where we could bring more bittern in. We do have some around Christchurch. But what do? We create more dog parks. Moving on. I want to contrast that with a recent trip I did to Nelson. I went to the Birds NZ conference 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago in Nelson. The field trip I went to was to the wastewater plant, the poo ponds, and went in with a guided group in there, 25 of us. We're walking around. Now they have their oxidation ponds, and they have 2 constructed wetlands sort of adjacent to each other. And then beyond the wetlands, there's a nice tall fence, and beyond that, there's a lot of open ground where people can walk and run their dogs. We're going around that ring road, looking out over that big high fence, and there's a guy with a bull terrier cross walking his dog through there, having a lovely time. We're on the safe side of the fence, on the wetland side, and we're just going around a bend, and the 2 young boys at the head of our field trip group turned around and said, "Marsh Creek, Marsh Creek, Marsh Creek." Great excitement. And 25 people, we stood on the side of the wetland watching a marsh crake about 6 metres away from us for about 40 minutes. It was so wonderful. 40 minutes standing there, photos, clicking cameras. It was so magical. We got to the after the trip, I found out that about half the people on that trip had never seen a marsh crake before. They went wild on social media, I'm told. Now imagine the interest that will be now, from now on, for birders going to Nelson to get a guided trip through the Nelson poo ponds because they could see a marsh crake. That there could be huge economic advantages for us pursuing this, for actually making safe places for these birds. These birds are special. They deserve help. Now, another thing that Celia wants to say to you is that doing it better, making it more safer and better for wildlife, could be a cheaper option as well. So even fiscally, it could be worthwhile. But I want to also emphasise that I'm not saying keep people away from these areas. People need to connect with nature, and that's what the story about Nelson is about. When people connect with nature and they learn to love these things and they really want to protect them, they do need to. There are ways you can design that people can engage with these areas. Bird hides is one really good example. Sometimes you could even have the dogs, but we don't need to have dogs in the sort of random way that we have them in so many places around Christchurch. The sign, "Dogs under effective control at Clare Park," is a nonsense. It's a nonsense. Effective control is probably making sure your dog doesn't go too far into the wetland that it needs a bath afterwards. So I'm sorry, did I sound a bit bitter then? I want to just finally finish up with saying something that Hayley referenced, and she used the word compliance quite often. When you're talking about dog owners and other behaviours from people, sometimes education just isn't enough. Sometimes a little bit of compliance would go a long, long way. I managed a conservation project on the Lower Heathcote for 5 years. I had so many conversations with dog owners. Look, honestly, one council officer giving one fine would have done more work than I managed in all of the conversations I had. Seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Left any time for questions?
Managed to use up all your time, but thank you very much for making the effort to come in. Very much appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, now what we have got is Sam Broughton coming in, but I know he's not going to be here until just before 11, so I'll start moving on and get through some other things, and then when Sam gets here. So presentation of petitions, we have none today, so we'll move to our supplementary report and confirmation of. Yep, Sam's happy. Councillor, yes, McDonald and Councillor Cotter, happy to move. And second, that is to include the PX supplementary and item 16. Oh, yes. Getting ahead of myself. Move and second, the PX supplementary, item 16, extraordinary Christchurch Civic Award. Move and second for that. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Now can I get a mover and second to receive the Central City Parking Restrictions Committee minutes and confirm the open council minutes as set out in items 5 and 6. Councillor Scandrick, Councillor McClelland. All those in favour? Against? Question. Yes.
Yeah, question, because I found it a little odd that the minutes don't come through with any pictures, and I'm a picture person. And if you look at the diagrams and maps on the third one, because I asked for it, on Manchester, the parking ones, that's what we just did, I think.
So
with the receipt of minutes, any questions need to only be with respect to their accuracy. So, but if you have questions, the chair,
Okay.
I'm sure could.
I'll keep it to myself.
Thank you. Okay, so
No
I
point.
will
Doesn't change
put
it.
that. We've got a mover and seconder. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, Kerry. And Councillor Curran is no. So we'll whip down to the number 7, Otakaru Avon Stormwater Management Plan. Paul, please. And yes. And a couple of others. Fire away.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't have a presentation, so I'm here to answer questions.
Fair enough.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, here's Councillor Cotter.
Look, and once again, I can't find it scrolling through, but I'm sure it said in here somewhere that the street sweeping, which came up in the deputation, is not super effective. Is that correct, or what's your view on street sweeping? Because I always thought it was a very good thing to do.
The information we've had from a research was done by NIWA for Nelson City is that it picks up about 20% of metal contaminants off a street. So that's less effective than if the stormwater was put through, say, a basin or a filter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a possible intervention, but it's not it's probably not the best one.
Yeah, but okay, but then the filters obviously are the best way, but then there's a financial barrier to those as well. So can you tell me what our street sweeping program is currently at? Because I don't recall actually seeing many around lately. We're still doing it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The frequencies differ, but I think it'd be fair to say on average, streets get swept between, I think it's possibly weekly in the city centre and every 4 weekly in outer parts, but perhaps 3 weekly might be an average-ish sort of frequency.
Okay, thank you. And then, if I may, the other approach that we're not taking is the regulatory one because it's a tough road to go down. But I mean, looking at zinc roofs and copper and things like that. I know we're addressing the copper-free brake pads in another avenue. Why couldn't we start doing that? And would that be through the district plan or building consent, building regulations?
I think there are two issues here. Well, the first is that the council doesn't have powers under the Local Government Act to regulate the type of building materials that are used. And the second is that, taking roofing, the most popular and the cheapest roofing is colour steel. People understand it and like it. And and it has worked well for us for probably more than 100 years. In my view, education, the issue we're facing is a long-term one. The health of our rivers has developed as it has over 150 years, and it might take that amount of time to reverse the process. I think we have time to educate, and I think education would lead more effectively to source control than regulation. Ultimately, regulation might be needed, but I think the council would have to take its ratepayers with it if it was going to do something that drastic.
Right, so that's a long journey as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the plan. It's very good and see all the work you put into it. Thank you.
Okay. I'm happy to move this with Councillor Templeton and then Councillor Johansson.
Kia ora, thank you. A couple of questions. Firstly, just actually on that street sweeping. So I thought it was less frequently than that, but just wondering if we could get a memo of some advice on the street sweeping program for the city, which would be good. The study that was done in Nelson, you just talked about the metal contaminants, the 20% of metal contaminants. There's quite a lot of other stuff that comes off the street, so there's a whole pile of dust, sediment, plastic rubbish, those kind of things that come off.
Yes.
But street sweeping is supposed to be effective for those particular contaminants, is that right?
It picks up anything bigger than sand-sized particles quite well, yes.
Yeah, that's it. So there's benefit for doing the street sweeping. It's just that the particular metal contaminants is not as useful for.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And are those other things taken into account as part of our stormwater consent?
Yes,
so
they
sediment and things. Yeah.
Yes, they are. So I apologise that my remark about street sweeping was a little misleading. I'm rather focused on metals because they're toxic. Because they're toxic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But particles are important too.
Okay. So, in that case, do you see benefit in us increasing our street sweeping frequency, especially for areas that we know have a higher amount of, especially, dust and sedimenty kind of stuff and rubbish?
Well, there'd be a benefit and there'd be a cost. I think it would be a great thing as a planner. It'd be great to be resourced to do a quite a large study to compare all of the various means of capturing contaminants and the costs and the benefits, the financial implications.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be quite a lot of that kind of research around already, though.
There's this question.
Yeah, yeah. So Mary, can we please get some advice on the street sweeping program as it currently is, and the resources required to increase in the benefits, those kind of things? That would be really useful. That may not be in time for the LTP, but maybe for the annual plan. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I've got some.
I don't think we need street sweeping as part of the resolution.
No, I think we just get some information. That might be one of the things.
Investigate
that comes in there as well.
stormwater quality enhancements. It's
one of those, isn't it?
Yeah. And the other thing that occurs to me as part of the thing, and I know that, so I talked to Brent about this yesterday, was that normally with plans and things that we develop, whether it's for water, like we've got our sort of 3 waters strategy, those kind of things, we do plans that are ambitious and where we'd like to see the city, and then we allocate budget over time to try and, as it's available to achieve those things. And while I understand that we've got some basic minimums here for the consent, it concerns me that the pre-allocated budget in the LTP is driving the recommendation for the plan instead of councillors setting an ambitious plan for the city for stormwater quality and then allocating budget to achieve it. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question. Somebody could, either Gavin or Brent.
Yeah. Yes, Councillor, we've had discussions about this, and yes, the discussion in the report talks about a funded level that will achieve compliance with the consent, and if we were to do more or an enhanced level over and above that, yes, it would cost more, but it will take a bit of work to cost those out, and that's why I supported your additional recommendation up there. We say let's do some work to inform the next LTP, so we don't just comply with the consent conditions, but what would it take to go that extra step? And maybe it won't take 150 years to bring things back to the way they should be. Yeah.
So the street sweeping, though, it's in that street sweepings are the levels of service, isn't it? So
yes, that would be a level of service change. Yeah, and you include the sump cleaning with that.
Yeah. Okay. So no, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Johansson, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering why we don't have a hearing into these stormwater management plans. Like, obviously today's quite a technical document and we've heard some quite specific submissions. Why do we not have a hearing process around these?
This was discussed about 5 years ago. It was considered by Dave Adamson, who you'll recall, and he took legal advice from our legal department, and the advice was that the consent is fulfilment of the SMP is fulfilment of a resource consent condition, which is within the delegated authority of the GM.
Good answer.
So it just seems quite tricky for us to hear from deputations today and then make changes as a result of the deputations in the same hour that we've heard them. So maybe something to think about going forward around our engagement and comms satisfaction levels. But if we wanted to do more, and I know in 4.3 it talks about the aspirational, potentially higher achieving plan not being supported by funding provisions, but I know we've put significant budget increase into the LTP, particularly around, I think, Addington and possibly Riccarton. So is there an option that we can go through that is more aspirational and achievable than the current one that's being proposed? And if so, what's the best way to move a resolution to get that considered?
It's been added, item 4 up there, that we will come back in the 2027 LTP. We'll look at options that can achieve higher levels of outcomes. We don't have that available at this time.
Yep.
But we don't want to wait.
That's a good answer.
We don't want to wait that long. If we want to respond to what the submitters have said today, is there a resolution that we can pass to add?
No, there's not. Because as I said earlier, we're putting stormwater basins around all over the place. One of these areas that is of discussion is down at the Avonside Drive Bickerton Reserve, where this place where there seems to be a lot more rubbish. There is a lot of money going to be spent there one day soon, building another pond, that retention basin that stops that stuff going in. And as I said, ECAN had a bit of an issue on us building ponds and groundwater and things like that. That has been resolved, so it's full steam ahead to get things like this done. So it's now been seconded by Councillor McDonald, and the next question I have on the list is Councillor Coker.
Thank you. I just, with the, because we've got, I said we had two options, the compliance and the aspirational options, but in the resolutions there's actually no choice for that. It's not even mentioned, which I found a bit strange, because I would have thought it said and council chooses the compliance option. So I was wondering why the resolution doesn't actually include that as a choice.
Well, the report explains that that the LTP doesn't fund a more expensive option, and that a lot of the things that you would want to do, you would need to do, aren't possible under the current law. So the report to council has to present more than one option, and it tries to explain why the second option isn't it wasn't selected, or isn't viable.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question, which is there is compliance, aspirational, and as indicated in Sarah's resolution there, a continuum in between, which is sort of what she's aiming at, I think. And there's things that we can achieve and things that we can't achieve. Why are we not thinking about a gradient of more than just compliance and other options? Because I would like, we hear about these every time we get a new plan, and we always get the same information. It feels hopeless, basically.
Brent will be able to answer this, I'm sure.
I mean, ultimately, this plan is to deliver on our obligations to comply with our resource consent. So that's the bottom line for us. Otherwise,
I realise that. But
so yes, there will be, but in doing so, and the team are already putting things in place that are different to what we've tried before and are achieving better outcomes. But yes, there is a continuum, and that's why with the additional recommendation that Councillor Templeton put up, I think it gives us the opportunity to review how well our stormwater management plans are going, delivering on our consent obligations, and what more we can do. And then it'll come down to Council's appetite to do more than what is the bare minimum, and where would you like to take it. But that takes quite some time to put that information together.
Yeah, it's a shame that that isn't sort of staff initiated previously. But what I wanted to know as well, and I guess this is sort of along with that, is, some of Colleen's other points about like impermeable surfaces and rain tanks and making those things easier to achieve. I mean, every single councillor around this table would all support that stuff. So what is it that we can actually do to make some movement on that? Because we never seem to make any movement.
any person could install those things themselves. I guess you could argue there's perhaps insufficient education about means people could take on their own properties, and that we could do more in that area. However, before the council could regulate for things like rain tanks are being installed on new builds. Before we could regulate for such things as, let's take permeable pavements, we'd need to be sure they work. And the evidence is not very clear that they perform long term. So there are a lot of ideas people have that a council would hesitate to require people to do without being sure they were the best option.
Okay. Will those things be picked up in number 4 with resolution 4?
They should be, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, one more thing. I just wanted to make an amendment to number 4. It says ahead of the draft long-term plan, but I would like to aim for the annual plan the year prior to that. Not next year's, but the year after.
Moving it to the annual plan.
Well, rather than waiting 3 more years to start doing anything, let's make it 2, because I know next year will probably be hard to achieve, but the year after should be good, so we can actually get some budget. Because it's a big argument about this.
Brent, is it capable of being implemented? Because I know you guys are already all over this anyway and are doing everything that has been asked for anyway.
Yeah, the difficulty, councillor, will be whether there's enough time to get a good handle on the status of whether we're making a difference. We do annual reporting, so that gives you a 2 or 3 years. Also, if as a result of it you might want to recommend a change in level of surface, such as for street sweeping or sump cleaning, then you may end up have to do that is normally done through a LTP, as opposed to an annual plan. It can be done, but changing levels of service is normally done on that cycle. I just think it's a 3-year period would give us time to do that further research, costing, and to do the cost benefits and propose anything. I mean, ultimately, it's a 3-year cycle for the LTP, but we'll be starting on it in 2 years' time anyway.
So could you potentially sort of do a staged approach? So if you came up with something that could be stepped in before that, you would bring it to an annual plan.
Like something like
that. So you want something comprehensive in time for the next long-term plan, but that is not going to stop you bringing something up to annual plans in between that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Will we be happy with that if we just amended into that number 4 rather than doing
looking at levels of service.
So it might not be full comprehensive by the annual plan, but we'll bring something back and then it could be brought back again for the long-term plan.
Yeah.
What about annual plan and draft long-term plan?
Why don't we actually put in the word something about a
Why are we
staged
wordsmithing
approach?
everything when it's already being done?
We know.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to have it in writing, because you might not always be here.
We live in hope.
Ahead of the what about ahead of the
He's
of
turning it,
no.
Is he retiring?
So ahead of the draft annual plan, or to a annual plan prior to this, if there's any options.
If there are any achievable options.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Kewen.
This one goes to Sarah's point about increasing the street sweeping. A question I've been asking for, I believe it's 7 years now, is why does it take 3 trucks to sweep a street? And I'm still waiting on the information why you have 2 pilot vehicles on a road sweeper when it's going the same speed as our rubbish trucks, which don't have pilots, and on the same roads. And so I'm still waiting on that information. So if that could come back, because the savings of not having 3...
Be able to do more.
You could do 3 times as much sweeping because you'd only have sweeper trucks out, which are very well lit and reflective. So if we can get that information, that could be the way to fund it.
Thank you. Councillor Henstock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is supplementary to the questions from Councillor Templeton and Coker. I'm just keen to understand with respect to the conversation about whether we're street sweeping and whether that's the best thing to do, best bang for our buck at the moment, or whether more research is needed. I'm keen to understand, does the research actually exist, and do we need to analyse it, or do we actually need to be funding research to better understand what the cost-benefit analysis is of the different methods that are available?
There's been quite a lot of research worldwide about street sweeping. A lot of cities are interested in a lot of cities sweep their streets, they have to, and they're interested in how effective it is. It's useful. We haven't done much research in Christchurch, and it's useful to know your local environment. Sweeping streets would pick up grit and contaminants and litter. It would be a good thing to do, and there'd be a cost. The question is about the cost benefit, and that's the thing that we haven't yet got the information to say. Is it better to build a filter or sweep streets? But no doubt sweeping streets would pick up stuff.
Okay, and so you're expecting that with the inclusion of number 4 there, we'll be in a better position to decide where to be putting our investment?
Item 4 enables us, gives us the opportunity to answer that question, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. 2 more, please, and then we'll get moving on. Councillor Donovan?
It's sort of a follow-on from some of the questions that have been asked already, but it's about how we can actually action the plan. And are you able to clarify how much funding's in the long-term plan around sort of some of the work to enable communities to do some of the work that we've heard Avon Otakara Network are doing? So, for instance, we've got the Community Waterways Partnership Fund. We've got the Natural Waterways Fund, which does a lot of work around naturalising those spaces. Can you just speak a bit more about where the funding sits?
Those programs are funded outside of the Stormwater Management Plan. I don't have in my head the amounts involved, but Community Waterways Partnership could be $500,000 a year, could be somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, and the other fund is, I have no knowledge about the amount there.
My understanding is that the one that Hayley was talking about earlier has ended already. So some of the projects are funded to FY27, but we actually don't have any funding on budget for that. Some of the other budgets that you referred to have actually been cut to 100K, so they've actually been reduced. And then there are some other budgets in terms of the consent obligations that have been cut completely. So it'd be good to get some advice on that.
We'll come back with some
thank you.
information about that.
And lastly, Councillor Johansson, please.
Just want to check on 2 very specific things. One is there was submissions around using a more nature-based approach to the mitigation, but I know that we put in quite an expensive stormwater treatment for Bells Creek and Richardson Terrace. Have we ever got a report back on the effectiveness of that type of solution, or in terms of looking at what we're doing going forward, is there going to be an understanding of the cost effectiveness versus the efficiency of mechanical engineering solutions rather than natural?
In respect to Bells Creek, I believe we're still waiting for a final report.
Okay.
There are locations where there's not enough space to put in basins, so we are putting mechanical treatment in.
Is there any resolution we need to do to get progress on that Bells Creek Richardson Terrace one? It's sort of not the first time it's been raised, and it's obviously it was a big investment by council.
I don't think you need a resolution to progress the collection of information and reporting.
Okay. And then the final question from me was around that whole copper brake pads and zinc roofs. Is it true that we've previously been through LG&Z to get advocacy on that? Yes. In terms of central government? And what's been the outcome of that advocacy?
The central government has heard the advocacy. The Minister for the Environment has his own timeline for dealing with things, and in his timeline, rural waterways are first, are way up top, because 97% of the length of waterways in New Zealand are rural, and you'll be aware of rural issues. So MFE has a lot of people in it, like myself and Gavin and Brent, but and they are aware of the issues too, and I understand they've brought them to the minister, but we await the minister's response to that.
Okay, thank you, Annie. Now, Councillor Templeton has told me she has a very short question, which will be followed by an extremely short answer.
It's a request for Mary. Can we please get some clarity over the Community Waterways Partnership funding? Because it's stuff that gives us that community input. They do so much on a volunteer basis to improve our waterways. So, we have some clarity ahead of our long-term plan. It's just where is the funding? Because we wouldn't want that to be completely cut.
No worries.
The other, just Phil, do you want to note up there that or Phil and Sam, that we're going to be getting the information, getting a memo on the street sweeping program? Or is it fine?
I've already emailed out the request.
Yep, thank you. So,
No.
Councillor Sam, I'm happy with it. Are you happy with what you see up there, the change? Yeah, okay. So, dare I ask, is there any debate? Of course, yeah.
Ever take the 3 minutes? Oh, sorry. Look, I just want to thank staff for all the work that's going on here, and let's not lose sight of what council is doing in the stormwater management space. And Councillor Johansson's already mentioned the Bells Creek filter. It's a massive thing. Go down and have a look at it down Ferry Road there, and filtering out a lot of contaminants. And that's the ideal solution in some ways, but to put those all over the city obviously is very cost prohibitive. And so as it quite clearly states here, and this is where the Community Waterways Partnership comes into its own, is getting the communities on board to stop putting the, as I think Hayley quoted, the crap into the water in the first place. I think personally that people have become far more aware of stormwater and where it goes, and particularly the source off our own properties, than they have been in the past. And also the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee's done a heck of a lot of work in this area. I'll draw your attention to the Stormwater Superheroes trailer, which they take around to schools, and it's a fantastic thing. The sides open up and you can actually, the kids can see where the stormwater travels once it leaves their home or once it leaves the park or the street. And it's, getting to the children and getting them to learn about that and be aware. So that's really important. So I agree, the Community Waterways Partnership does need to be resourced as much as that we can. And I would like to see more visibility of what happens in those meetings come through here so that we can see what's happening. But yeah, I think we're doing a pretty good job. It is a long, long game, this one. As Paul said, it's taken a long time to get to this point. It's going to take a long time to clean it up. But I think that we're doing a pretty good job. We'll strive to do better, but as you say, it's got to come from the community and behaviour change. So I'm happy with this today, and particularly number 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Templeton. Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you so much. And I know that when staff come and present plans, what they often get is questions and things that might need improving, but there is an acknowledgement that actually this has been a huge amount of work, and it will be improving our quality of water over time, which is fantastic. Our communities do value their water enormously. Water was the most commented on thing as part of the what matters most engagement for the long-term plan. Not just our drinking water, but our waterways as well. So our creeks and streams and rivers, and the way they feed into our estuary and then onto our beaches as well. And people really value that. They take pride in it, and they know that it's currently poor quality and they want to do more. So enabling our communities to do more, supporting them in that work and working with them, both for the water quality intrinsically in itself, but for the biodiversity that surrounds it as well, and that is essential not just for helping the water, but in its own right. So looking forward to the dog bylaw review, Colleen, that's coming up. So we need to look at that as well, and making sure that we do improve our natural environment over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scandrett.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much for the work on this. We talked about ministers, etc., but the fact of the matter is there are ministries, and I'm really disappointed that we still have copper brake shoes in our country, and there's no reason why we should. They should have been outlawed years ago, as they have been in California and many other places in New Zealand, in the world. And it's also, we have the hangover from the earthquake. EQC used to just hang out a cheque and not check that the work was done, where sewage pipes, etc., were cracked and leaking and going into our stormwater, and it is a major problem still today. That we've been assured that they've changed that attitude for the future, and we certainly hope they do, because a lot of people took those cheques and bought a boat and a new car or whatever, rather than fixing the things they should have. So we are moving forward in steps, because it is all about personal responsibility, and I think that through organisations such as Enviro Schools and others, the younger generations are picking this up, and we've seen that as we go through with a lot of climate action with regards to the young ones coming to us and reminding about us older ones about our responsibilities. So I think this is a good way forward, and thank you very much.
Okay, righto. And I'll just throw my two bobs within. One thing I will take my hat off is to, well, the amount of work you've done for one, a lot of years in this, but one thing I will take my hat off is to staff, because just because in years gone by we built a pond, or retention pond. Retention ponds are really good for collecting silt, and that's why we've got them over by the hills, but not necessarily building one down in Hagley Park, because there's different systems now as time goes by and life evolves. We get better systems, cheaper systems, and the staff are looking at these all the time, like these nets that catch the contamination that comes in. So I'll be supporting this, obviously, but they've done a fantastic job, so well done. So with that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you. Carried. Right. Mayor Sam. Good timing. How are you, buddy?
Good, thank you.
The floor is yours.
Great. Well, kia ora koutou, Konihira o Otatahi. I'm Sam, Mayor of your neighbouring district, Selwyn, and President of Local Government New Zealand, and back here today to talk on behalf of LGNZ and your membership and contribution to the good work across Aotearoa. Firstly, please continue to be members of LGNZ. Your contribution to LGNZ, to the way that local government functions across the country, to the way the government thinks about local government, is important that you're in the tent and working with us. There's a few key reasons why we think it's important for you to stay, and benefits for you to be a part of that. Firstly, and I mentioned this last time, the $1.2 million that conference brings into the city. So we'll be here last year for conference, and we'll plan to book back here for conference again. That'll bring over 800 delegates from across the country, key leaders for local government. It'll bring the Prime Minister and other ministers into town for that conference as well, and supports your hotel and hospitality sector. So your direct income for the Christchurch economy of 1.2 million. We also have a lighting profile that we believe would save the city $500,000. This is the ability to work with your electricity providers around using dimmable lights and making sure that you receive the savings for dimming lights. It's been, we've done some research to understand what the impact would be for you, and would be happy to work with you on the implementation of that. Could save about $500,000 for you. And our corner is the professional development space for local government as a part of Local Government New Zealand. As those of you will know, if you've attended courses either individually or brought people in to facilitate courses for yourselves, they can range from sort of between $2,000 and $20,000 per course. All of the professional development within our corner is included in your membership for both you and the community boards within Christchurch as well. I think that continuing to be involved with LGNZ is good for your advocacy. There's certainly things that Christchurch and Greater Christchurch and Canterbury work together on advocacy for, but being part of the national story around government understanding the pressures and needs of local government is helpful, so that when you then have a minister in town or the Prime Minister in town and talk to your specific Christchurch needs and desires to invest for New Zealand, the context of local government is understood by those ministers. Having Phil on National Council means that the Christchurch voice is at the table in the direction of Local Government New Zealand, and having Simon Britton, one of your community boards, he's a co-chair of the Community Board Executive Committee within LGNZ, also means that the influence of Christchurch around the direction that we take is helpful. And thank you, Phil, for your contribution in that space, and to Simon as well. The government's been really clear about wanting to work with regions and working with councils that work with one another. That's why they're talking about city and regional deals. That's why the local Water Done Well is asking us to think about how we work with one another. And so being in a space where you show that your commitment to local government New Zealand, working for the sector across the nation, is a part of what the government's expecting to see from us as councils. And lastly, I think that it's good for not only for you, but it's good for the South Island. Often there can be some conversations about is Christchurch doing, is Christchurch with us on this, or is Christchurch trying to be above us on this? And these are conversations that other councils feel, and attitudes towards Christchurch City. Because you're the biggest, you hold the most sway, you are able to attract attention. A lot of the press stories are around what happens for Christchurch City Council. And the Canterbury Mural Forum's been really clear that we should be doing things together. Māori from Hiranui often talks about how do we do things together for Canterbury, and that means being involved with one another, understanding each other, and being committed to one another. And so the South Island wants Christchurch to be in the tent working with us. And so thank you for the opportunity to come today. I am just reiterating lots of the things that I said last time, but I know that it's one of your decisions. So, please stay with LGNZ.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Cotter, Councillor Fields, Councillor... Right, Coker, sorry. Yeah. I spent...
You're so similar.
Yeah. Councillor Coker, Councillor Fields. For a start.
I've got three questions. What will be the view of Selwyn District Council of Christchurch City Council if we vote not to continue being members of LGNZ today? Is there a view?
The decision of our district will not just be mine to make, it'll be of our council, so I couldn't really give you an answer to that. But I know that we have wanted to work in collaboration with Christchurch City now since 2007, being part of the Greater Christchurch Partnership, and collaboration and working together for our area is hugely important to us. The artificial line that sits somewhere between Hallsville and Taitapu and somewhere halfway through Templeton, and as you head past the prison out towards West Melton, like that really is, it's a line on a map that doesn't mean a whole lot to people that travel over it every day. And we need to both be able to serve the communities. Our economies are linked. The people that live in our communities are linked. Our people that play in our sports teams are linked together. So yeah, we would rather you continue to think about partnership, and that means staying with us. Yeah.
With the conference you mentioned, if we voted to leave today, would that conference still be in Christchurch next year?
No, we would look to have the conference somewhere else.
Okay, and I guess the last one is about kind of lobbying, because what sort of started, I think, this kind of question about being part of LGNZ was whether it was giving a voice to central government that we as a council had at that time. Have you got any comment on that?
I think you should do your own advocacy to the government. I think that's an important part of being a large city and wanting outcomes for Christchurch. But that also means that when you're a part of that advocacy, having some joint advocacy that's gone on beforehand in front of you helps smooth the road for your own individual advocacy. I've got regular meetings with the Prime Minister, Minister for Infrastructure, Ministers for local government that happen on the New Zealand context of local government, and I think that really helps. When you ask for things, they understand the setting that you're in, and we've seen that really clearly with the rates rise conversation. New Zealand has gone through this year rates rises between 6 and 26%. That's way higher than we've been before, and the government now knows that because LGNZ has pushed it. We've created over 100 stories in the media about that need, and so by us doing that, it makes it easier for you as decision makers for Christchurch City to have the rate rise that's appropriate to you, but higher than what rates rises have been in the last 10 years.
Thank you. Councillor Field? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. So for a ward that's like Banks Peninsula, that's like full of communities of special character and is largely rural in sort of outlook and makeup, I guess. What are the benefits there? Do you think that and it's tacked on to a metropolitan, a metropolitan space. So what are the benefits that membership would bring for a ward like Banks Peninsula, just given the context, the sort of the relationship it has with the city.
Yeah. So most of the services and benefits that LGNZ provide are to councils rather than to individuals within the community. The individuals piece comes from like the business spend that will come with conference next year and that sort of thing. The spend and benefit for councils and community boards is really those direct stuff that through training, through networking. Like last week we ran an online session looking at abuse of elected members, and that then becomes available to all elected members, whether you were one of the 100 that could be in the room at the time or not. And if you come up against that, and you might not be feeling it right now, in 12 months' time you're like, oh man, what supporters are out there for me when I'm going through ABC? You can connect back in to those. I've heard LGNZ membership described like gym membership. There's lots of things maybe in a gym that you don't ever use until you actually want or need to use them. And the more you use them, the better your fitness gets. And so actually being able to connect them with LGNZ on the things that matter to you when you need them, we make them available all the time.
Thank you. Councillor Kewen.
Sam, you'd make way more money selling real estate, but that aside, you spoke of our neighbours, including yourselves, wanting to be having us in the tent and in a partnership and that in the region and stuff like that. So where does that leave our conversation over funding Canterbury facilities, i.e. the stadium? We're already in the tent on the museum, but the Arts Centre are more than happy to receive some funding from you guys, as well as other any major events that we do as a region. So do we have a way forward on that?
Yeah, and I've said to Phil, once the stadium's built, we need to be talking about what attractions come to the city and how do we actually work together to say, when something is hosted at the arena, how does that benefit the rest of Canterbury and what might the contribution need to be? So, it's not about the build of the facility, but when when you think about that next stage, I think there does need to be a conversation that we have.
Right.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. So, some concerns have been raised over value of membership. So what approach has been made from the council and requests have been made of LGNZ over the last year or so around value and what improvements it would like to see to value? What requests have come over the last year in that space?
I think in the last 12 months we've seen a change in leadership within LGNZ, so that's Phil and I have been a part of that change. And the value piece has been around responsiveness to our members' needs. That was the Future by Local Government work. There were over 200 people in the room across 2 days, and the ability for every elected member to feed into what the priorities for LGNZ were going to be. That meant that if things were going to be 50-50, we dropped them. People are really passionate about the voting age being 16. Some people are equally passionate about making sure the voting age is never below 18. And so we're like, let's not make that an LGNZ priority at the moment. So let's drop the stuff that's controversial. And so I think that's been the biggest change that with Phil and my positions within LGNZ's National Council, we've been able to reflect back community value.
Yeah, no, I mean, from this council, what requests have been made of LGNZ around its concerns around the value of the membership and what changes it would like to see to whether it's the membership structure or where it sees it's not getting value? What requests have been made to try and improve the value?
Well, Phil, I can't answer that. I don't have a list of the number of requests that were made. Sorry, Andre.
I don't mean like remits or that kind of thing. But if it believes it's not getting good value of LGZ, what requests have been made to improve?
So on National Council with Phil being there, that has meant that he's raised some things about, should we be doing this piece of work or should we be doing more on this piece of work? So I think your involvement, not necessarily directly from the council itself, but through your membership and Phil's position on National Council has shaped that.
Yeah, the requests have been responded to and acted on. That's what you're saying.
Okay. Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Templer, please.
Thanks, Sam. Listen, it would be fair to say, and there's a number of people around the table here who weren't here last term, that the first questions about membership of LGNZ came around the disconnect between LGNZ and councils when it came to the Three Waters reforms. And I was there at the Zone 5 Zone 6 meeting when there was the apology and a really good conversation about where to go from there. Could you just talk us through how LGNZ has changed its approach since then and what it's learnt from that and how that has happened, the value that the membership has had in doing that?
Yeah, I think Phil and I have been a part of that change. That was one of the key reasons why I wanted to be president of Local Government New Zealand, because I felt that some of the stories and the value that members saw wasn't actually truly what was going on. So the Three Waters conversation, because the government was so quiet on what they were doing and then put out misleading adverts to the community and changed their position from this is all optional, no it's not, it's mandatory. Local Government New Zealand, because we were trying to share information that the government wasn't, got seen as being the promoter of all this change. That's 2 or 3 years ago now. That's not the space that we're in. The only things that you'll see LGNZ take an advocacy position on are those that have been agreed by more than 75% of our members. That's why we're not doing the 50-50 stuff anymore. Individual members can do that. The Future by Local Government work confirmed what those areas were, and those will be where and most of the areas were 95% supported. So that's where you'll see LGNZ working now.
Thank you. Councillor Scandrett.
And thank you very much for coming. Always a pleasure. I'm not talking about political parties, I'm talking about ministries. I think we have more from the ministries in Wellington putting up more and more requirements for local government, and it's harder for smaller rural organisations or councils than ourselves, although it's technically more costly, with regards to rules and requirements to fulfil at the end of the problem. And I'm just wondering, how much do the ministries really listen to LGNZ? Because the key, small councils will never be, it seems, will never be listened to, irrelevant of their ministers, and it's not politics, I'm talking about ministries listening to their ministers, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
It's ministry by ministry, so there's different approaches taken by each. The Ministry for the Environment has invited local government members to work on the local government steering group with them, which helped shape some of the conversations around the RMA. That's a scaled down group with this government, but the ministry is still keen for that to occur, and members are still a part of that. So it does happen, and I feel like one of the conversations we need to have as a country is the shape and size of councils, and how we work together and how we collaborate with one another. And to your point exactly, Kaikoura, for an example, in Canterbury, serving a community of about 5,000 people, is responsible to meet all the same deadlines, to work with all the same legislation, to employ their chief executive, to be abused in the local supermarket, all of the things that you go through. For over nearly 400,000 people. So there's this real difference in the way that local communities are, and so LGNZ serves all those communities, and we're wanting to facilitate safe spaces for conversations about changes and better collaboration. You guys and us, at the moment, we need to work together in new ways. Yep.
Okay, I want to get moving along here because we're well over, but good questions. Councillor Coker, again.
Sorry, I was just about community boards because it just struck me then that our council's, I think, the only one in New Zealand, if I'm right, that actually has community boards across its whole district, and I think and so if we were to step away from LGNZ, what effect would that have on the community board participation within sort of LGN? I know that there's CBEC but yeah, especially in the South Island. I can't remember the numbers of community boards, but yeah.
So Christchurch has influence, and your influence on National Council through Phil, and your influence in the community board space to support other members and think about advocacy through Simon is considerable. And I don't think Simon will continue to be able to be have that level of influence as co-chair of CBEC if Christchurch decides to withdraw.
Thank you. And Mark, please. Councillor Peters, please.
Thank you. I'm thinking one of the reasons it's brought this to our attention is the increase in price this year. And I'm picking that a large amount of that is likely to be the fact that we've now finally got access to the Akona training. Why could LGNZ not make that available without blowing the price out so dramatically?
So the lift in cost this year there's numerous reasons. Actually, probably the biggest reason is because we haven't put prices up for the last 3 years. And before that, we weren't putting them up by CPI. So the cost to deliver for councils has gone up and income hasn't matched that. Yes, providing a corner means that instead of being a purchase and only those councils that purchase it can receive it, now means that it's available to all members, so that is a contributing factor. But LGNZ as an organisation has made decisions to cut costs as well. So the lift was looking, and I mean, your council will have done this too over the last 6 months, shifted what costs could have been to try and make savings. So we've moved premises, or will have moved premises twice in the last 12 months to save costs. Vacancies that had been there or have been created over the last wee while won't be replaced and filled. So we've taken a really strong look at what's the income and expenditure of LGNZ and tried to keep costs as low as we can, while making sure we fund, the type of system that we need to keep everyone working well and healthy.
Thank you, and thank you very much for coming in, Sam. That's great. We will now stop and come back at 25 to 12 for something to carry on. We'll have a smoke out because we haven't had anything for a while. Yeah.
Cool, thank you, everyone.
as he burns his lips. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8, New Zealand Local Government Association. I've got Helen and Bede up the
Phil,
front.
can I just flag a motion that we've sent through to the team that we'd like to put on the table, seconded by Jake, please?
Okay.
So he's flagging a motion that he's putting up.
Can I flag moving option 2, and I'll send through my amendments to you now.
Who said that?
So you may have to foreshadow that what you're. We'll get the motion on the table first.
Let's get Helen and Bede to tell us their story first, and then we'll see.
And in the meantime, we'll get the first motion.
Okay.
Kia ora koutou. We weren't intending to go into any detail. The report speaks for itself. There are 2 matters that I would just like to address, which came through the combined Community Board information session yesterday. And that was firstly, Local Government New Zealand, you'll have seen in the table of advantages that refers to support services that are available to all elected members and access to wellbeing tools. And I was asked what could be put in place. I've spoken today to the Council's Health and Safety Manager, and what could be made available to all elected members is the same workplace support that's available to staff. And that scheme operates to support effectively anything that gets in the way of doing your job effectively, and there is counselling and psychologists available, and that could be switched on with virtually immediately, and the costs of that depend on how much it's used. So that is available for home life stress, finance, grief, and other pressures that individuals may need additional support for. The second question I was asked about was in the original, in the 2021 report to the council, there was an assessment that there'd be 2 full-time equivalents required to cover the work currently undertaken by Local Government New Zealand. And I just wanted to refer to the report before you at section 4.14, where our current assessment is that we should be able to absorb that work within the within existing resource. We're not talking about an identifiable person or half a person. It's effectively little slithers of extra support that may be required, but also there is work and time and resource put into supporting the membership of Local Government New Zealand, which may also be able to be reallocated. And if our assessment on that is wrong, that would be a matter for the Chief Executive to come back to you at another date. So those were the 2 matters I wish to just address, and we are here to answer any questions that may be helpful.
Okay, questions? Councillor Templeton.
Thanks so much. In the past, there's been a concern about elected members accessing what are currently employee benefits. So around things like counselling, that kind of stuff, professional development is done separately, those kind of things. So why the change in that advice now?
So before Local Government New Zealand had the support services in place, which I can't recall exactly when they became available, but it was within a year, 18 months ago, I believe. Before that, my understanding was that some members were provided with services upon request, but those explorations had been looked at that time around making the workplace support available more broader, but in the meantime the Local Government New Zealand offering became available.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Moore?
So, sorry, you're saying as of now, things like counselling support are now available to elected members?
I'm saying we can effectively switch that on for all elected members if the support services that you currently have access to through Local Government New Zealand became unavailable.
Okay, so you're saying it can be switched
Yes,
on?
can be switched on.
Okay.
At very short notice, our supplier has capacity to be able to provide that support.
Okay. So it's been discussed that we could do lobbying in a different way, or we can employ someone to do that. So I'm just not clear who you mentioned would be doing that. Who can do it? Who's resourced to do it? Would it require getting someone new?
That's not something that we've taken any further at this stage. That is something that we could come back to you if you make a decision to give notice to no longer be a member.
Yeah, so we don't actually have a plan around that per se?
Not at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Donovan?
Just in terms of the extra support, because I know there've been a lot of requests, and it is a bit surprising to hear that we're only sort of looking at that now, or if that was sort of potentially an option previously. Is there a difference between some of the needs of staff within the organisation, potentially elected members, given that the roles and functions of both are quite separate? So, for instance, an elected member might need training around standing orders and things like that, whereas someone within the organisation might prefer training on something else. So have we looked at where the overlap will be within the potential to switch on that training?
Currently, the training for elected members is covered by its own council policy.
So,
Alan, can you just clarify the difference between what you meant by support by the external provider and training? So I think Councillor Donovan's might be confused about those two things.
Oh, my apologies. So the support I was talking about was workplace support, which you may otherwise hear referred to as EAP support. So previously that was the colloquial term stating for employee assistance program. So I'm talking about what's now called workplace support, which is the current name for that. So that is the support I was talking about. So my apologies if I was unclear.
In terms of professional development provision, what would be available?
So currently the professional development provision is contained within council policy. The current date of that policy is 2019. That is the provision.
There is no sort of in-house provision that's applied across all councillors. It's a sort of on an individual budget basis.
The current council policy is that it is self-directed to a certain financial limit, and that limit is up to $4,000 per year.
Thank you. Councillor Cotter.
It's just that, I'm a bit concerned when you're talking about that those services available for things like counselling and wellbeing support services, that they could be activated from this organisation, but you can't put a price on that. Then that's quite significant, because if it turned out to be 20 elected members a year throughout council and community boards, that could well equate to a membership fee, or 50% of a membership fee, who knows? So there will be a cost to that.
As it is for using the service, that it varies on how often it is accessed, and the different experience of the different forms of support costs different amounts. So it's very much on a user pays effectively basis, and that it's impossible for me to know, because the information from Local Government New Zealand is that's not information they can provide to me.
Okay, so the bottom line is that there would be a cost should any elected members want to receive counselling or support services.
That's correct.
If we left LGNZ. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harrison Hunt, please. There, mate.
Kia ora, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Kia ora. Hi, Helen. I'm just wondering what the cost would be for elected members to get that support regardless of the LGNZ offerings through EAP?
So that's provided on an hourly basis, depending on how often the service is accessed. So
so the price fluctuates, does it?
I can't be more specific than that.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Templeton.
Thanks. one of the differences between elected members and employees of the organisation when it comes to various expenses is the fact that elected member costs are all published and accessible. So, for example, when I have used the EAP program through LGNZ, I accessed 6 counselling sessions due to the harassment I've been getting. Part of that is a non-disclosure thing, so the organisation, no one has to know. And that for many people will help. If a counsellor chooses to access support services through EAP and it costs the organisation, and I know my stuff was over $200 an hour, will that be listed and published? And so the general public will know that there's been a cost there, and that will put people off potentially accessing help.
The service is confidential.
But the fact that counsellors have used the service and there has been a cost to the public, will that be made public? Because that's generally what happens with any expenses that counsellors incur as elected members.
Annual report.
It's all the Goimerable and stuff.
I cannot see how it would be identifiable to a particular councillor. It would, or other elected member, it would be charged back to a budget, but it wouldn't be identifiable.
Okay, so how does that meet our obligations? If we're as elected members as opposed to employees, right? Because that's what we face a lot of the time.
We wouldn't be EAP does not identify who's used the service. It would potentially go back to an elected member code.
Yes.
So it would be the quantum of the elected members, but it wouldn't come back. Just like when it comes back to council, we don't know which staff it goes to a lump sum code of the staff who have accessed EAP. So nobody knows that they've accessed it unless they tell them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donovan, please.
So just to be clear, we'd be switching one subscription for another, is that to get a similar service, but we don't know what the cost would be to take on?
There is an existing supply arrangement for counselling and other support services to assist staff with stresses that are affecting their ability to do their role. So effectively what it would be doing is opening that supply arrangement to be able to be accessed by elected members as well, and the cost of that will be actual usage.
Okay, so it's the user pays. And with regards back to professional development, I'm aware, having come to council and not come from a local government background, when new elected members come to council, they're not aware of what support is available in terms of professional development. So currently, I'm not aware of any kind of database or system where councillors can go to, and it has a whole range of professional development opportunities. Really, they're just sort of left in the wilderness to figure out where the gaps might be. So how would that be addressed by removing access to, for instance, Akona, which I know has been introduced recently? So it's a new provision, and it's a new opportunity for councillors who are coming in and having to get up to speed pretty quickly.
So the council policy is that training for individual members is self-directed up to the value of an annual amount. When it comes to the local government general election, there is a project that will be owned and sponsored by the chief executive and the executive team to prepare a program for inducting new members, as there was at the previous after the previous election.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just clarify that the policy of self-directed training was what the council laws wanted and passed in their policy? It wasn't something imposed on them, so it was a policy that was adopted by the council.
That is correct. It is a council policy, and any review of that policy would be by the governing body of the council.
Okay, thank you.
So I've just got two quick more ones. In terms of the Akona tools, is there a limit to how much professional development you can access? Because I'm aware community boards they don't get, a lot of our community board reps don't get paid very much, and they're juggling different jobs, so they would have access to potentially unlimited amounts of professional development, where otherwise they're capped at quite a low level. So do you know if because one of the key differences would be if it's self-directed, you're also limited by what you can spend, whereas through a CONA, effectively, you're only limited by what's available.
So for the community boards, there is an allocation per board, and historically that allocation has been underspent.
Final question is, the other thing that community board members have commented on, and councillors, is around the opportunities to network, which I think is quite a sort of under recognised aspect of LGNZ, is that, you know, young elected members and other groups that might sort of be new to local government, they might not feel the support through the organisation. What opportunities would they have to network in a sort of more formalised and structured way outside of LGNZ through this council?
I don't think that's a question I can answer.
Okay, and Councillor Peters, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for sharing that information about the workplace support. It's a question I actually asked at the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Committee recently in an informal setting as to, is there workplace support for elected members? Because I know some elected members that have really needed some support recently. So good to hear that that's potentially opening up should we vote today. But it's always surprised me too, the lack of access to training. You know, I started on a community board 4.5 years ago, and the training in governance or standing orders has been invisible. And to now see that, now that we've finally got access to a CONA through LGNZ opening it up to everyone, we may potentially today vote to lose it. I'm hoping there's some sort of plan going forward to enhance the training available to elected members.
All I can repeat is what I've already said about what the current council policy is about training.
Right. Is there a possibility to review that policy?
It's currently earmarked to come to council on the 3rd of July.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, how am I going to work this, Mary? Yeah.
So we have a motion that's been moved and seconded there, and we also have a foreshadowed motion, which, so if the first motion fails, we will move on to the foreshadowed one. So that foreshadowed one, if we can just get it up on screen.
So the foreshadowed one is the other officer recommendation that we stay.
No, Andre,
It's Andre's one.
Andre's got some additional ones.
I haven't seen Andre's one.
Yeah, any minute now.
Where is it?
They've been emailed to everyone
Yeah.
15 minutes ago, and Katie's got this put up.
So that's, yeah, so that's the foreshadowed one. So if you've had time to read it, we'll then move on to...
I don't understand it. Can I? Oh, hang on. There, it's different than what I've got.
So he's added in
Oh, I see.
those 3, 4, 5,
6 and 7.
7.
What I've sent you is
3 to 6. So can you just hold up those and read?
Happy to second if I need to.
Or whatever. Yeah.
There you go.
So those are the new ones.
Are the new bits.
Yeah, and they'd likely be, if we get to that, likely would put them each separately.
Okay.
If we get
And so Harrison Hunt seconded that foreshadowed motion.
Great.
Tyler,
Thank you.
Harrison Hunt. Yep. So if we go back to the original motion that was put on by McDonald and McClellan, seconded. Yep. So the good. One direct.
If it pleases the mover of that foreshadowed, would we be able to add an additional, which is collating all of this resolution here from Councillor McDonald's and actually using that to provide a report in line with the annual plan 2025?
I just recommend that we deal with the motion
Push
currently
first,
on the table
yeah,
first,
and then we can settle the foreshadowed one. Yep.
Okay.
But
So-
in short, yes, that would please me very much.
So we'll go into debate. Shall we? Who would like to? Everything.
We're debating them both.
The whole shooting match. Councillor Templeton.
Well, I've got to say, I'm been really impressed with the changes I've seen in local government New Zealand over the last year and a half especially. They are way more engaged with councils, way more advocacy and media attention, focusing on the issues, and a lot of research, all which benefit all councils. Otatahi Christchurch is slowly but surely, and actually it's speeding up, losing any relevance and influence on the national stage. We need a strong voice, and as those of us who've been members of the union and unions in the past will know, there's strength in numbers, especially with the size and heft of Auckland at the other end of the country taking up all the attention. Do we really believe that we can foot it alone when the government have been clear they don't want to work with individual councils? LGNZ is not just about lobbying either. We are currently the largest council in LGNZ, and taking a leadership role is an opportunity we should take with both hands. We often hear from the public concerns about the decision-making ability and governance skills of elected members. Professional development opportunities abound through our membership with Local Government New Zealand. Our CONA offers unlimited ability to access relevant development opportunities. Our PD budgets are small, they are tight, and they don't give us the opportunity to do as much as we would like, and community boards have limited opportunity apart from the odd community boards conference to use that. I've already taken advantage of some of the Arcona workshops and courses so far, and I'd encourage others to give it a go. And even if you don't feel the need, please don't cut it out for your colleagues. Elected member networks are also important, and support for underrepresented groups, access to advice from experts on issues impacting elected members, access to free counselling services, and lastly, the conference, if nothing else. The over 1,000 people to Christchurch next year with the combined Local Government New Zealand and Community Boards Conference, and the economic benefit that that brings to the city. We often pay to bid for these kind of things, and we won't have to with the local government conferences, and they will come every second year if we decide to stay a member. Staying a member of LGNZ is an investment in our leadership and advocacy, and elected members' professional development, and in their local economy. And I'd urge councillors to vote against the motion to decline the membership, and for those wavering, give it another year or abstain. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Henstock, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really pleased that we held this over to receive the community board feedback, and thank you to my fellow community board member Simon Britton. That was the right thing for us to do. That said, we only received a 30% response rate, which was really hardly overwhelming. It was valuable for me last night to attend the online community board meeting, which discussed this issue, and I heard firsthand from some community board members who had accessed LGNZ resources for professional development, and particularly for workplace support. So I'm really pleased to see the reference in there to the professional training and the workplace support. And I'm also encouraged by Helen White's reference to the wellbeing support being available. I think that's a really great step forward. In respect to the community board feedback that was received, the stats, to my mind, really don't justify the level of spending. We've got 8%, we've only 3 people who received advice. We've got 3 that attended a conference, and only 4 attended an online hui or a webinar. So we're hearing in the chamber today about how valuable it is, but the reality is that the uptake is not there, and the feedback is just telling us a different story to what we're hearing today. And noticeably also that the networking events and the conferences were also not universally valued by the respondents to the seminar, and I think that's significant. So to my mind, it's not justifying the spend. I do acknowledge there's benefits of membership to smaller councils, but we're a metropolitan area, and I just don't see it adding value to us in that same way, and certainly not advocating for us in Wellington. And I think the infrastructure allocation for Canterbury is relevant to that. And in that regard, I want to quote a Facebook post from some of my colleagues last night about South Island being increasingly irrelevant in the national conversation and to the new government, and we need a plan and a strong voice advocating for that. So why is that? Well, that's because LGNZ isn't doing it for us. So thank you to my council colleagues because that originated from those two posts, and we really have to do better if we want to be taken seriously in Wellington. And I think that we can advocate more effectively and more specifically on the matters that are important to that. So again, I'm pleased to see the allocation of the 30,000 for the parliamentary engagement and strategy. I don't think it's enough, but I really do think that's a step in the right direction, and that will be money well spent for us. So I'm inclined to agree with this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McClelland.
I don't believe that there's no value obtained from LGNZ. I do think there's real and proper value. I just don't think it's $170,000 worth. I think there's value in training, there's value in elected member connection, and there's obviously value in engaging with central government, and we saw that go awfully wrong over the Three Waters issue. I just don't think that we're doing it to particularly good effect or at a reasonable cost. When we debated this issue the last council pointed to a whole bunch of benefits from LGNZ. There were actually optional extras at the time. It was a real debate on a false premise in my view. The reality is, I think that the fellowship and the training in local government doesn't need to come with such an expensive executive overhead. We don't need to invest into a multi-million-dollar organisation to still have opportunities to connect and to have training. I also reject the idea that this is a union. It is not a union. It is a professional services body, like chartered accountants or the Automobile Association. Unions stand up for workers who don't have any other choices and very little power in their employment situations. They fight for basic health and safety and workers' rights. This is entirely different. I think that where we've arrived is a really good place. It's allowed members to see the counterfactual and see what services would be provided in a post-LGNZ environment. You can see that there's 60,000 going to the community boards. One of the big issues when we last discussed this was the lack of support that community board members felt that they were receiving. There's 30,000 for us as well for professional training and workplace support, which is important. There's money set aside to engage with Parliament, both government and opposition, and obviously there's a saving that we can use to spend on some of our amendments when we sign off the LTP. So it's really good, but again, I really want to finish on this point, which is it's not just the cost, but it's how effective we're being. And I don't believe, as Victoria raised, we are actually engaging. In fact, I know we're not engaging well with central government because I certainly know that was the case last term when Labor were in government.
Thank you. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I was totally for the idea of leaving this off the agenda paper for last time round. We needed to go back to the community boards and hear from them because this does have huge impact on the community boards. I also attended the combined community boards meeting last night, and I was extremely underwhelmed by the response from the community board survey. To me, that kind of painted a picture, and you would have heard me in questioning talking about elected members who need to access workplace support, and it's great to hear that the organisation's looking to open up to offer that to elected members as well, because it surprises me that we never had that prior to this. Also, I've been trying to get access to governance training since the day I got elected to community board. The fact that we didn't have a CONA, I think, was tragic, and it's a shame to see that it's only just been opened up to all LGNZ members as we come to this decision today, because a CONA, I think, is a resource that should be freely available to all elected members, and I think the fact that it's caused the fees for LGNZ to blow out to the extent that they have is unfortunate for LGNZ. It would have been better for them to try and absorb some of that for this round so that they could, give people the value of a kona and access to it freely without having to cause this debate today. So I think the challenge for us as a council going forward post today's decision, whichever way it goes, will be to pull together and to make sure that we're all well supported, supporting each other in our roles, and supporting those community boards in their roles, and supporting everyone with their workplace support needs as well. Because it's a tough job being here in the seats. It's not as easy as people think it might be. You've got a lot of pressure on you from all angles, and we need to look after each other and look out for each other and get the best job that we can get done for our city. So I think the challenge, particularly for the organisation, is going to be going forward and making sure that everyone's getting what they need. So let's see where this lands.
Thank you. Councillor Cotter.
Look, I think that change in leadership in local government New Zealand, as Councillor Templeton alluded to, has been extremely positive. However, Mayor Broughton has not been in that role for very long. And I actually really like a couple of the clauses that Councillor Moore has put in here to signal to LGNZ what we think we should ask him to focus on. If we were to leave today, I think that's a very, very poor signal to our neighbouring council. We're not even giving this man a chance. I think he spoke very well and clearly today, and he's obviously passionate about local government New Zealand and working for us. And referring to Councillor Henstock's, comments about our South Island and we don't think we're getting our fair share of the infrastructure funding from government. This is exactly why we need a strong advocate in local government New Zealand, which I think they can be for us. I really do, and I think we've got to give him the chance. And if we look at, we're probably a third the way through our membership for this year, which started in March. So that's some funding that we won't get back of the 163. We're talking about filling a gap for advocacy from our existing budgets, which I don't think we've got room for personally, so that will be another cost. And we're looking at filling the gap for any counselling and wellbeing tools that we might want to access. That will be another cost. So in actual fact, in reality, we wouldn't be saving very much money at all this year. So if anything, I'd be happy to relook at this next year, but I will be voting to stay in at the moment. I think we owe it to Sam Broughton to give him a chance to see how he goes. The community boards. So we had our meeting the other night, and the opportunity, out of 9 community board members, the opportunity to attend the conference, only 2 are allowed to go. And normally it's the chair who goes, which I think is appropriate, and one other. Now, the community boards I don't think have been engaged, actively enough. And so that's something else we could feed back to LGNZ. And they're the ones who also need this stuff. So really, I think that we would be impacting Mayor Broughton's opportunity to have his day if we leave today. Not only with withdrawing our funds, which are considerable, but it would also cause reputational damage for the second biggest city in New Zealand not to be supporting local government New Zealand. I think that we would regret this decision if we leave today. So I'm urging councillors to oppose the motion and support the foreshadowed motion of Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Councillor Barber, and then Harry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We've just spent weeks going through the LTP, examining everything we spend money on, trying to tease out value for money. And to me, this is a good time to look at our LGNZ commitment. I personally don't think it's value for money. I think if people are looking for training, then my experience is a good one. I came in elected to community board and was elected chair in my first term. I didn't get any training from LGNZ. I got absolutely fantastic training from our staff who were with me every step of the way, guided me through the whole process with standing orders, etc. So the training is there if you ask for it. We've got the ability in this organisation to provide most of the training that people need. In terms of one member mentioned that Christchurch is losing its relevance on the national stage. Well, I would dispute that. I think there are so many positive things happening in our city, and it really surprises me that someone would have that attitude when young people are moving here in their droves. Our university's growing. We've got amazing things happening across the district. The aerospace industry is projected to be worth out at Tāwhaki at Kaitoriti Spit some $2.4 billion over the next 10 years. So I think we're not losing our relevance on the national stage, and if we can take control of our own destiny without putting it in the hands of others, I think we'll do better. I think this is an expensive overhead, and I agree with Councillor McClellan on that point. So, yeah, I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison-Hunt, please.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Firstly, I'd like to address a few things in this. And the first one are the LGNZ conferences. And I'd like to start by saying that as a new elected member, LGNZ's been fundamental in my progression as a councillor newly elected. Not only did the conference provide fundamental insights from those seasoned members, but it gave me a new lease and ideas that I can travel towards innovative and cost-saving ideas. Also utilising things that were of low-cost projects. Now, I'll tell you what I received from the conferences themselves. I learned directly from other new and old elected members who had very similar issues as us, but also found ways to navigate them, and honing in on my ideas, such as the Citizens Assembly idea, the youth engagement ideas, my portfolios, and using standing orders to make change where needed, and also gave me advice on dealing with different communities and so much more. And you'll be able to see that reflected in the Mayor's recommendations and my LTP amendments, of which started from the LGNZ advice that I've received from my colleagues from all around the country. Also, as the only Māori elected member in this council right now, and one of a handful of all elected members in Christchurch, I get that support from them. I'm also one of 4 young elected members in the council, and that's also support that I get, being able to understand the issues that they have and how they get to navigate this space too. Second, I'd like to talk about the economic benefits of it. As Mayor Sam described, the economic benefits of the conferences in LGNZ, that which he said would be biannually, equate to around $1.2 million, which is around 7-fold of our investment. And I'd really like to see what the hoteliers and the hospitality providers would like to think about taking $1.2 million from their pockets biannually. Lastly, there's the amendment itself and the national advocacy work that we need to talk on. I'd like to challenge this council in questioning the advocacy piece of the amendment provided. I'm not confident that this individualistic approach would benefit outside of the PC14 decision, which was bespoke but wide-ranging. Central government has quite often on both sides put their 2 hands on their ears when our city's representatives are creating noise. I feel like if we do this, then they will continue to do that, but only do that to us instead of 76 other councils. Talking on the amendment itself, I believe it would be beneficial to wait until the annual plan in 25-26, where it would be seen to be more pragmatic, where we review all memberships. I'd be happy to review the provided resolution, the one that's standing right now, once we give LGNZ a chance to address our colleagues' issues, and I'm pessimistic and concerned about the notion that we'd be able to provide the support available by injecting this budget into internal pots. If what is currently being offered right now is perceived to be good enough, I wouldn't be confident in knowing that I'll be supported. Lastly, I implore my colleagues to not take the financial risk in a what-if maybe amendment. Wait for a year to be able to provide a report of this, outlining it in line with the annual plan, and continue to utilise the LGNZ conferences or resources. As Mayor Moko from the far north so rightly put it, it's like a gym membership, you get out what you put in. So therefore, I want you to support the foreshadowed amendment with the addition of using this current resolution to be in line with the annual plan in 25-26, which seems to be more pragmatic and financially sustainable.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Yeah, look, if it's possible for the council to fund its own more effective lobbying, training, professional development, I'm open to all of that, but there's no evidence of that being the case. Nothing's been costed. There's no facts proving that there's another way. We've been told clearly there's no plan for improving training options. We'd have to change it policy. We're so close to having all of these training options available to us, potentially about to vote to remove the bill, which at least let us go absolute ham on that training for a year before leaving. That would seem like good value. As for we should be advocating ourselves, there's nothing stopping us from doing that now. It's not one or the other. You can do both. I mean, we had Brum Street cut, Cook Street Ferry cut, surf funding cut, and we've been as good as silent. LGNZ's not to blame for that. It's not LGNZ's job to speak up about Brum Street. It's our job. And ultimately we failed to speak up on that. If there was a great plan to start lobbying better tomorrow, then great. But there is no plan. We haven't seen one. So central government's got local government by the balls. Central government collects around 95% of the taxes paid. We're responsible for around 25% of the infrastructure. And we even tax 15% on a rates bill. We have to beg for funding for transport projects. The funding mechanisms do need to change. All councils will tell you the same thing. If councils start disbanding from one another and lobbying for things that contradict one another, nothing would ever change. Ministers can't be in 70, 80 places at once. Right now they're thinking, you lot go agree amongst yourselves, then come back to us with a solution, and then we can start working towards it. Three Waters should be a good learning from that. So my amendments do offer a pragmatic compromise. They strike at the core reason of why we're considering this in the first place. One's investigating alternative lobby options. If there's better options, then let's do them. If they prove to be better, we're going to look at leaving later if we know we've got better options. If we don't believe we're getting good value, then let's send that signal, actually meet with LGNZ to try and get that better value. If we haven't asked for it, well, we're not going to get it. We haven't had that meeting as a council. I'm not sure why. We should be doing that before making a decision like this. There's a lot of real hefty decisions coming up, and we have to be really, really careful. That's all councils. And number 5, we've got $657,000 a year in various memberships in addition to LGNZ. Plus sister-city relationships around $130,000 a year. So all up, you're looking $800,000 a year with other memberships. We should be looking at all, the value of all, not just looking at 140 grand there and saying, okay, well, this is the reason for all of these issues. We should be looking at the value of all, because it's going to be hard to justify not having a relationship with other councils in our own country, but then saying, no, we are happy to spend money on those relationships with cities on the other side of the world. To justify one but not the other may be quite tricky. So we should be reviewing all at once, doing our due diligence. And the one about travel bookings is the fact that I won't be able to explain in detail, but believe me, there's method in the madness. So we should be doing the work before making a decision to leave. If all the numbers stack up, there's a better deal elsewhere, I'll absolutely be quite happy to consider leaving next year. Making a knee-jerk decision doesn't seem responsible. But if you're going to vote to take opportunities away from your colleagues, there should be some meaningful dialogue amongst us before that happens. Just responding to Councillor Peters' comments about supporting each other, voting to take away opportunities from other members just simply isn't supporting each other. The Young Elected Member Network, it can't be replaced. There's nothing we can introduce at council that replaces that. There's not. And for me, and I believe for Tyler as well, it's been one of the highlights of actually the term so far. Learnings from that have been so invaluable, which would have been a surprise to me, I've got to say. So I urge council to support these amendments. They capture the spirit of why we're here today, and I believe that if we work together, we can actually end up with a better outcome, and we'll review these things properly over the next year for the annual plan.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald?
I'll wrap it up.
Imagine you're an MP or someone who works in central government and you're developing policy that affects local government. When you want to engage with the local government sector, who would you contact first? Well, obviously the entity that represents councils across the country. Therefore, it doesn't make sense for Christchurch not to continue to be a member of LGNZ. Regarding benefits to community boards, which I brought up in a question to Sam, most board members don't know the value they can personally have from LGNZ, which has already been mentioned. And as Pauline said, it's partly because we don't set aside enough funding to support board members to attend events and conferences. They're very valuable. And just in Zone 5, that has, which is the top of the South Island and we're part of, that has 22 community boards. We have 6 of those community boards, which is a very big proportion of that. So I think we should take that into consideration. Sam highlighted today the cost benefit to our council of remaining part of LGNZ. Now, by choosing not to spend $160,000 today, as others have mentioned, we will just deprive the hospitality industry of $1.2 million. That's $600,000 every year, as those conferences would be every 2 years. Is that financially prudent? There'd be other financial benefits as well, as Sam mentioned earlier. The other thing with the conferences is if we don't have those, it means other local elected members across the country would not visit our beautiful city, and therefore they'd have less ability to learn lessons that Christchurch has had over the years, particularly in relation to the earthquakes and mosque events. And I think that's a disservice to local government actually throughout New Zealand. Also, as been mentioned, the chair is the mayor of our neighbouring Selwyn District Council, and that council, it was in the paper yesterday, I think, where it's growing at such a fast pace. It's the fastest growing district in the country, increasing 29% over 5 years to nearly 80,000 people last year. It's nearly as big as Timaru and Ashburton, and in 10 years it'll be as big in Dunedin. That's our neighbour. I think that we should, think about what we're saying to our neighbours if we decide to pull away from LGNZ. I recognise we're really a large council. We have a voice in our own right, but we are part of a layer of government in this country that's very important. And I'm actually really concerned with the myopic view I've heard around the table today about what's in it for us. Have we thought about what benefit we can have to our city through conferences and other financial means, and other benefits we may later receive that we aren't even aware of yet? And what benefits could us being involved have to South Island and New Zealand in general when it's, in relation to local government? That's what we should be thinking about. Isn't it best to work together with other councils? Are we just trying to send them all a big F you? We don't care about working with other councils. If that's the case, I'm very disappointed with councillors who decide to vote to leave LGNZ today.
Okay, Councillor Skendrick, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just keeping in mind that our first responsibility is to our ratepayers of Christchurch, and to say that 2 reasons why we should stay here is because of we owe it to Sam Broughton, and a conference every 2 years is absolutely ridiculous. I'm all for personal development, and I think it's an absolute wonderful thing. I myself didn't get any education at school. That's my stupidity, but I spent 5 years getting it myself, paying it for myself years later. And I tell you what, you are very careful and focused on when you are paying for education yourself. So I think there'd be a lot of ratepayers out there questioning why they're paying for our personal development, because when we chose to stand for council, when we chose to stand for community boards, we chose from an educated position, and that is what we hope to bring here today and ongoing. It is absolutely essential. We ask ourselves, why don't more people come to council? Why don't more people engage with us? We've got information here from the community boards in black and white, and yet around this table we choose to misinterpret it. It's really simple. 10 community board members came to us, 4 of them have said yes. These community board members are adults. I've been on the community board prior to coming to council. We run businesses. We are educated generally. So I think it's really important to listen to what they've said. To say that it's highly important, we haven't advocated enough for our community board members, that's nonsense. It's personal choice to take up personal development. If it hasn't been taken up, that's fine. That's a choice. We have absolutely outstanding staff around this organisation who I have relied on for the last close to 11, 12 years and prior to that, and it's been fantastic. Really good understanding on how it works. I also like the fact that counselling has been brought in-house, so we are one with our staff. And do think that sometimes when our staff come in front of us, they probably need counselling afterwards because of the way they are treated. I'm quite serious. So for me, I think that I would like to have a look at doing it ourselves. To say that we are losing relevance in the national context. My colleagues around here, I have 3 political parties represented at this table. So maybe you're the problem, we're the problem, not the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald. Oh, sorry, Councillor. You haven't spoken, have you? Councillor Donovan.
I find it interesting that we discussed what LGNZ means, and I heard a comment that it doesn't represent this idea of what being part of a union is. So I googled that just to clarify my understanding of what a union is, and it says definition of a union is the act of joining together or the fact of being joined together, especially in a political context. So actually, LGNZ, which is the peak body representing New Zealand's 78 local councils, providing a unified voice for the sector and pathway for continuous improvement for councils, would, in my view, fit the definition of a union. So I am a little surprised that one of the councillors that is strongly advocating to leave a union speaks on behalf of other unions. So, I look forward to some clarification on it at some point. We also hear a lot of commentary about going it alone. We see that on the international context. Brexit, I mean, what a massive success that's been. Go it alone. We can do it alone. It's going to be much better. The benefits will be huge. Perhaps the councillors that are advocating for this should have gotten a bus, because then we would get some clearer messaging about what the benefits are, because I can't actually see them in this report. We've heard about the benefits of potentially switching to user pays. Where's the budget? Where are the specifics around the benefits? I don't see any numbers attached to the budget for counselling services. Well, we heard today we don't know what the budget is for that. We need to have every opportunity to have a say on the national stage, and people are saying, well, Councillor Moore's made the point that it's not an either-or scenario. We can and should be advocating for our city and our ratepayers through this city council, and I have to say, either we haven't been doing it effectively or we're not being heard, but either way, we should be taking every opportunity to be speaking up, because the reality is we are not seeing money coming through to our council. Unlike the current government, we've seen that the South Island has significant representation on LGNZ. The current president is the president of LGNZ from a neighbouring council. So we have representation for the South Island, specifically understanding our local issues through LGNZ. We have a member of our community boards is on the executive committee, and we know that our mayor is also providing strong representation through the executive committee. So what we should be focusing on is what's good for the South Island, which is collaboration and working together. So I'll be voting for Councillor Moore's amendment today, and I would urge the rest of the councillors to do so.
Thank you. And Councillor McDonald, please.
Paul, just very briefly, I think everything's been covered, really. There is a first to everything. I didn't think I'd hear Brexit mentioned in here, but stranger things have happened. The other thing I never thought I'd hear in here, certainly from you, Celeste, was that Phil was strongly representing Christchurch and Wellington, which I took from your comments as well, so that was fantastic. I think if you look at the structure we've actually got structured here, this is far more equitable for the community boards and for the council. I certainly know since the election that we've made the effort to engage with the government. And they've always been very clear that the door is very open. I think the commentary around projects being removed and money drying up, if you look at it, that's happening right around the world. It's certainly happening in New Zealand as they're trying to rein back in a significant amount of spending. And look, I think what we can do is by knocking on their doors directly and having those conversations, we can get things over the line like the Pages Road Bridge. I personally am very confident we will get Pages Road Bridge over the line by being far more direct with the government than going through a lobby group, LGNZ in Wellington. So look, I think the structure in this is very good. I would almost put money on it that we will get Pages Road over the bridge. Pages Road Bridge, hopefully you don't get Pages Road over the bridge. That might be the risk, actually. We will get the bridge sorted by doing this direct approach, and I think the Mayor's been very resolute in dealing with that. The government seem relatively receptive as well. So I think the more we can do on that, that would be fantastic. So I would urge people to take this next step for us. I think it's a really good way to put Christchurch on the map and say, we can do it ourselves. We are good at what we do, and we're effective in the way we communicate with Wellington. That's what they've been asking for, and this is what that delivers. So I would hope people support the motion that Jake and I have put up today. I think it strikes a good balance, and we can move forward.
Okay, right. With that, and I will use the word division because I'm sure it's going to get asked. I'll put that. Thank you, Katie.
Why don't we just let the division go? No, it's just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So this is the full motion as put forward
moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor McClellan, which is to decline to renew your membership in LGNZ, and then with the additional recommendations 3 A through D.
There's no sense putting them.
That's his motion.
No, do the whole lot together.
Well, I don't want to vote against receiving information.
No, that's not what Katie said. Katie said to what the motion that Sam put, so it's 2, 3.
3 A through D.
Yeah. Well, if 2 failed, I'd look to be incorporating some of that into my foreshadowed anyway, is the other point. So it may as well all be voted on.
Okay.
Okay, let's just put the motion.
Is it,
Whatever you want.
Is it?
Yeah,
Has it been
go.
emailed around?
Okay.
Katie's
Katie's going to run this.
Katie's on it.
Are we ready, everyone?
Yeah, she's doing it.
Yes,
Just
we are going to vote on a division. So recommendations 1 through 4, those were the existing ones, so we can discount those in this division. So you'll be primarily voting on recommendations 2, which is to decline to renew your membership, and recommendation 3, which are the additions made by Councillor McDonald and Councillor McClellan. Yes. Cool.
Yep.
Fantastic. Deputy Mayor Cotter. No. Councillor Barber.
Yes.
Councillor Cooker.
no.
Councillor Donovan. No. Councillor Fields.
No.
Councillor Goff.
Yes.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
No.
Councillor Hinstock.
Yes.
The Mayor.
Yes.
Councillor Johansson.
No.
Councillor Kewen.
Yes.
Councillor McDonald.
Yes.
Councillor McClellan.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett.
Yes.
Councillor Templeton.
No.
That's 9-4
All good?
against.
Righto, that is carried. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to number 9. We do, don't we? Straight on 9. Yep.
Sorry, do we, just before we move on, do we need to revoke the attendance at the LGNZ conference and withdraw our posting agreement? Or?
Can I just check process-wise? Because I'm partway through one of the Arcona courses that I'd quite like to finish. When are we sending that in writing? So that I know when I can...
We'll come back with some advice.
Yeah.
So the 6 councillors still going to LGZ conference, including Councillor McDonald and Goff. They've currently got their names to go.
We'll
Still
liaise
going?
with LGNZ and come back.
Because I think those
Names down to
tickets
go.
have already been booked.
Okay, yep, so we'll come back with some advice around that.
No, we're still paid.
Yep, we'll come back covering.
Right. Sorry to keep you waiting. Okay, so on item 9, an heritage incentive grant application. So, Brendan, far away. And Victoria.
I'll move this.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Tim.
Carry on. Don't let him and Button.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is actually the last Heritage Incentive grant report that will be coming to you, because as things currently stand, it is the last funding that has been allocated to support heritage retention across the city. It's no longer in the LTP. I'm going to take the report as read, but very happy to answer any questions you may have on specifics that relate to these 2 applications and the recommendations we've made.
I think generally everyone's happy, and we've got a mover and a seconder, so I will put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And sorry once again for keeping you here so long. Okay, so number 10. Now, I'm sure Councillor Templeton is happy to move this. Oh, yeah, and yeah, Aaron's just had to go to a funeral. See you, mate. Thank you. Yep. And I'm happy to second it. Councillor Templeton and staff have worked together. Well, Councillor Templeton put it up, and staff have worked with her to change the submission slightly. Is that right, Dave?
So we've developed a council submission, a supplementary council submission that was based off the staff submission that was submitted on the 13th of June, which was Thursday of last week. While we were developing the staff submission, we requested an extension of time, but we only received notification that we got that extension on the 14th of June. So the staff submission went on the 13th of June because we're at the end of the time period. 14th of June, we got the extension through to tomorrow. We've worked with Councillor Templeton to develop a council submission, which is before you.
Okay. Councillor Scandra, then Councillor Johansson.
You know, I just want to thank Councillor Templeton for the work she did on this. It's yeah, your commitment. It was really good. So thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry, I'm getting a few. Councillor Johansson.
Oh, yeah, so I just wanted to check if we wanted to put some additional comments in the submission. What's the best process to do that? I'd like to make reference to the issue of chlorination. So just wanted to flag amendments in that regard.
So the chlorination matter is not within the scope of what this bill's about or what the Finance Committee is considering. So I think we suggested back to you that you could just put a noting recognising it's outside the scope of the committee, but we'd like to just raise our ongoing concerns about things. But that's it. We can't advocate for anything because it's irrelevant. It's outside the scope of what this consultation's about.
But the cost to us is like 100 million, so it's very relevant to the cost of water services.
It's not something that this committee would consider.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but there's no harm in adding it.
The noting provision. But
so I'll move. Can I move that we add a noting provision, raising the concern at the issue of the cost of chlorination and the exemption and the difficulty in getting an exemption?
So we would probably have to note something that we recognise this is outside the scope of this committee. So the one that we sent through to you as a suggestion is probably the only one that would meet the requirements. So
and I think just to add one or two words to that, at the difficulty and cost in obtaining an exemption. So I think it does make it relevant to the discussion that they're having, even though it may be out of scope. So this is the one that staff have sent through. Do you want me to send that around the councillors?
No, we'll just put it up on screen.
Okay.
All right. So
where it says the concern at the difficulty, just add the words and cost.
No, just.
Great. Okay, so we're not just noting that in there, are we? All right. Yeah. So, any other question? Any debate? I think it's all pretty. Debate. Councillor Templeton.
Thanks. So I'd like to thank staff for the time and effort put into putting together initially the staff submission and asking us for our feedback at that time, and then actually collating the feedback to do a submission that had elected member feedback. So thank you for that. I know it's been a lot of extra pressure on staff at the time, especially with a really, really short time frame. And I know that most councils actually haven't had the opportunity to do that. One of the things that concerns me most about this particular bill is that there are no protections against privatisation. The bill talks about entities being competitive. It talks about them making profits, but no water servants agency should be making a profit off the residents of our city or any other city. Every cent should go into the safe provision of water and removal of wastewater. Any entity should be not for profit, not profit making. We know that when entities are profit driven, they cut corners. It also opens it up for privatisation. It also only talks about financial sustainability. It doesn't talk about environmental or cultural sustainability, things our communities value. And there is a need for taumata arawai to take into account te mana o te wai in the setting of wastewater standards. This is another in the long list of government proposals that are being done to local government and our residents that we have limited to no say in. Our stretch staff will not be able to comment fully on every one, even though they will impact the work that we do and add additional costs in many ways. Just now, we have the Water Services Bill. We have the Water Management Freshwater Amendment Bill that's due on the 30th of June, which I don't know about you guys, but I haven't had a chance to give my feedback on that one yet, but I will. The speed limit sitting rule feedback is due on the 11th of July, and I'm expecting that we'll do a council submission on that one, and that elected members should be asked for feedback. There's the new granny flat rules. We've had no time to engage. I know our feedback is due on the discussion document on that soon, and who knows what will pop up tomorrow. We are racing around, chasing our tails, trying to give feedback on things that will fundamentally impact the way that we are able to serve our communities. And the speed of change is going to do a huge disservice to everyone. Thank you, staff, for their time. Please keep us informed about the other changes that we need to make submissions on. And I encourage everyone to read the various acts and to give the bills and give their feedback.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. I think for me, I'm really concerned about what's being proposed. It seems to me this is just another layer of red tape and bureaucracy to local government decision making, but requiring us to essentially duplicate our infrastructure strategy, our water safety plan through a new separate process alongside the LTP. And it basically means more money, more time, more resources spent on repeating the current work rather than being able to be spent directly on investing in our water infrastructure. I think what's really obvious is that, one of the hugest challenges we have as a city is the issue of forced chlorination on our water supply. The cost is about $100 million. That's money that would be far better being spent on addressing some of the water infrastructure needs that we have, rather than adding a residual disinfectant. So I think we should absolutely take the opportunity, even if it's technically outside the scope of the submission, to make the point really clearly to central government that if you want us to be more efficient and get better value for money, there are things that you can do that would be incredibly helpful and useful. The other thing that I think is really interesting is to look at the role of central government around water services provision. And if we look at the Auditor General's office, it's not lost on me that not too long ago, actually, there was a big issue up in the Kaipara District Council around the Mangawai Community Wastewater Scheme. And effectively, the Auditor General fell short of monitoring. So if we want some robust systems in place to ensure that councils are doing what's important to do around the issue of the three waters, actually one of the models that already exists under the current arrangements is for the Auditor General's office to actually have a much more robust analysis of things like LTPs, annual plans of expenditure. And so I just think this is hugely concerning, that it's basically going to effectively create a whole bunch of duplication, and it fails to address the issue of the problem, which is we need central government to be putting more funding into the three waters rather than requiring councils to do more with an unsustainable rates impact that we're having in our local communities. And until they effectively address that, then I think we're always going to struggle as a country. But recognising that as a city, we've had a massive amount of work that we've done, despite the fact that we've had some of the toughest economic times that we've had because of the earthquake and COVID. So I, support the staff work on the submission. I think the concerns are very valid. And I particularly also want to acknowledge the concerns that's been raised around privatisation. I think that is very real, and we should be incredibly concerned about that going forward.
Thank you very much. Yep.
I just want to thank Councillor Templeton again. It's really important what she's brought forward. One of the things that kind of struck me was the term excessive profits. And, that for me sparks a really big alarm from central government if that's not kind of protected in any way, shape or form. There should be, and I totally agree with Councillor Templeton, there shouldn't be any profits here. It should be about upgrading the service that is provided to the people of the region or wherever this is. And we can look at other regions such as Wellington and others who are having real problems compared to us. One thing that's always kind of surprised me, and it was with the Three Waters Te Mara Arawai, I don't think has ever really understood the difference between Christchurch and our unique aquifer system to the rest of the country. So hopefully that they will take this up as we move forward. But again, I want to thank Councillor Templeton and staff for the work that's done. Cheers.
Okay, so I think we've been there and done that. So I'll put that motion. Yes, wrap away.
Thanks for the comments of colleagues. I think one of the things that's super clear from this is that with the number of changes coming our way, I think that and the strong advocacy needed and strong voice for Otatahi Christchurch, that, and I know it's not in there, but that the Mayor needs to present this to the Select Committee and be that strong voice for Christchurch on both this matter and all of the other matters that are coming up that we really need the advocacy on where it's impacting councils. And if you could raise the issue of the number of changes that are coming and the speed of them, that would be great. Thanks.
You're welcome. No worries. Right, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Good. Now, just before we go on to number 11, I'm just going to say number 12, notice motion. Councillor Kewen has had to rip away to a private matter. So I'm going to refer that to Finance and Performance Committee on the 26th of June. So that notice of motion is just going to vanish for the time being. So, Three Waters Activities Report, please. Kevin, good to see you again.
Afternoon. I'll take the report as read. If there's any questions, you'll notice it's a new format this time around. We've removed the capital component because that's reported separately through the Project Management Office. If you have any questions on the format also.
Councillor Fields.
Got it. So just in 2.3, so just in the in the tables and stuff. So just talk me through all the sad faces and the happy faces and what we interpret by those.
So it's meant to show compliance and non-compliance against the rules with our regulator. We are trying to work on a different way of showing that to make it a little bit more obvious, because there's some non-compliances where we can't be compliant until we complete a whole lot of capital works, which you're aware of, but there's other ones that we're non-compliant with due to other reasons. So we're trying to work out a way to communicate that a lot better. So that will be improved upon with the next report.
Sorry, you carry on. You got more?
Yeah. Is that all right? Thank you. So just on the thanks for that answer. Just in terms of the 3.3, the notifications, taumata Arawai. So just in terms of those non-compliances, are there any kind of risks that you want to flag for us? Particularly to some of those smaller communities that we might need to be aware of?
Not specifically. Is there a particular one in there that you're concerned about?
Oh, just across the city, Tim. Really, like I'm just, but there are some smaller communities flagged there, and I'm just wondering if there is sort of any specific risks to any of Devotial's, Pigeon Bay, Wainui, for example.
Not specifically, no, other than what we would have already reported on. I mean, for example, Devotial, there's an upgrade plan. There's some work being done around that. Same with Pigeon Bay, Wainui, Birdling Slat, Little River. There's upgrades that are occurring there. So some of these non-compliance is a result of the plants not operating as well as they could, and the program of work that we've got in place is going to resolve a lot of those.
I appreciate that, and thanks for your great work on the peninsula. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Templeton.
Thanks so much. I just wonder if you could talk me through the increase in the health and safety and the number of incidents there and what we think might be causing that.
I'm not sure I've got the detail around that, I'm afraid.
Okay, could we get some more information through that? Because it's quite a jump up.
Yeah.
So that would be good. And I noticed in the operation stuff there in 3.2, the number of water supply jobs that's through there. And you're saying following changes to response and completion timeframes within the new maintenance contract, which we know about, our contractor is sustaining improved performance. So what were those changes in the in the timeframes? So in the new contract, what were the key changes in there? Because we know they were meeting their KPIs before. We've sort of changed the levels that we expect, and they're now meeting those. Is that right?
The changes that were made were more around how they organise staff, operational changes, what we're responding to. Like, for example, with the large number of leaks coming in a while back, they implemented what they called a cone runner. So someone actually going out and physically looking at these jobs and prioritising them. So that certainly helps speed up, I suppose, the overall repair and return to service for those addresses.
Was that the extra stuff we had in January due to the dry?
It's more in general terms over the last couple of years, I'd say.
Okay.
There's ongoing improvements after, we're debriefing on contract matters every month. So there's just little small improvements that we're making in that space.
Yeah, and are there improvements that the contractors are suggesting that we're currently not able to do due to resourcing?
Can you say that again? Is that...
Like, because I know that the contractors do feedback changes and things that they could see that they could do if there was resourcing. Do we have a sort of list of those kind of potential changes and what resourcing would be needed, or whether there be a benefit in doing those?
I don't think that's really an issue. I mean, we've got the resourcing to be able to respond to this level of leaks, and City Care do now as well.
Yeah.
So we are. I don't think there's a big issue in that space.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor, there's also just a slight difference between our level of service response times and the contract ones, where we measure it from the time the call comes in, say to the call centre, then it gets sent out to the contractor,
Yeah.
whereas they will measure it from when they receive it. So
Yeah, makes sense.
there's a slight difference and I must say that 99% of the time our contractors do a very good job in terms of response. It's just the odd one that doesn't.
And sometimes we wouldn't meet our levels of service because of a glitch at our end where we haven't sent it through to the right place, rather than because of the contractor.
That can happen.
It can be a timing thing, yeah.
Yeah.
The other commentary you might have heard is around our leak detection program, and when we discover leaks, there's packages of work that are created as a result of that, and other kind of projects that we do. Some of those jobs aren't necessarily being completed within the agreed KPIs with the maintenance contractor.
Yeah.
But those tend to be leaks that you don't tend to see, middle of the road, deep underground. So we know we've got to get back and fix them, but we're not necessarily doing those within this level of service.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Could
It's
I
planned
just
work.
potentially also answer your question about the rise in health and safety? I think it's because one of the periods is a 3-month period and the other one is a 9-month period. So if you look at those tables, so I think that might be why the numbers look out of balance. Yeah. So one's January to March, 3 March, and the other one's 9 month. Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Peters, please.
Thinking back to those tables on 2.3, and the columns there don't make sense to me in the way it's January to March 24 and then July 23 to March 24. So it seems to be covering the same period in both. Am I missing something in that?
No, I think we do need to do work in that space, and we're working very closely with Katie and the comms team of how we actually communicate that. So open to any feedback on it, but we do need to try and...
Comes when some of the faces change from green to red between what seems to be the same time period.
Yeah, part of it's our reporting and the timing of the reporting, because this report was, a few months ago now. So.
Cool, thank you. Just on page 83, it says that we've got 5 significant non-compliances for resource consents, and I'm particularly interested in the bottom one, that the submitted versions of the Apawaho Heath Kit, Huratini Halsall and Otaikino stormwater management plans do not meet the purpose of condition 6. Are you able just to elaborate? I mean, obviously we've just had a big discussion this morning about submitting another plan that is achievable but not aspirational. Are you able just to talk us through what the non-compliances are and what we're actually doing to address them?
Regarding the last one, I'm aware of it, but I don't have the level of detail
Can we get a
to
memo
share
or-
with you on that particular one. It was around the modelling that was done, and ECAN didn't like the result of that, so we've had to go back and relook at it.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a non-compliance that has actually occurred.
Right. Okay.
Based on a proposal.
Yeah. Do we have a joint approach with ECAN around discharges to land and water from our stormwater network? I'm just mindful of what happened with the diesel spill the other day, and there was no comms to us as elected members from council. And I note that I don't think we're even on ECAN's stakeholder list. So I'm just trying to understand, like, in terms of the three waters, how are we working with ECAN around things like those discharge issues? Like, is there visibility that we can get about the number of, I don't know, chemical spills, toxic spills? Is there anything that we get?
We can provide that, but we don't. So the one that occurred last week, we were aware of. So we dealt with that at the time. We do need to improve upon our process a little bit and how we engage and work together, because there is a bit of grey there. Doesn't mean that we're not doing and working with them, but we do need to improve on that. So the team are working on that at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
there's not that many of those events that we're aware of that we formally support ECAN in resolving.
Right. Okay. And just the final question from me is in regards to the wastewater treatment plant, and obviously we're non-compliant. Understand that. It also has the diagram of the activities that we're going to do for the wastewater treatment plant, but there's no sort of time frame around the permanence, and there's hardly any information about it. We're told what work's being done to address odour, and the latest update I've had is we're waiting for the LTP before we do some of those things. And I'm just trying to understand why we're waiting for the LTP rather than just doing them now to like fix the odour.
Are you referring to the tripping filters?
So if you look at the sorry, it's just gone off. But if you look at the
So hang on, Yanni.
Yeah,
So
we've
Phil,
got the insurance on.
just to be very clear,
Yeah.
if you're talking about the insurance, we can't discuss that here.
So
but if you're talking about other
Yeah.
stuff that's in the LTP, but can you just be very clear, because we've been through this before. We will, as soon as we can be public with everything, we will.
So there's no time frame for the insurance. We don't know what's happening. We've got no idea in terms of the community when we'll progress on the trickling filters. But the other things that you do have on that graph are other improvements to the wastewater treatment plant that are subject to LTP funding to address odours. And I'm just trying to understand why it's being held up with the LTP. If we know of things that we can do to mitigate the impact of the odours or try and reduce the odours, why are we waiting for the LTP to be signed off?
There's
before
no
we do it?
projects in the LTP that will be linked to odour reduction. The key is the restoration, restoring capacity at the plant following the fire.
The capacity lead to the issues with odour?
Yeah, that's the
Councillor, a lot of the things that are being done at the treatment plant addressing the odour are operational changes and tweaks and what have you. So, and we're keeping the community informed through this process as to what we're doing in trying, and they've been quite successful.
Right. So just to be clear, there's no work that's waiting for funding to mitigate the odours that are coming from the wastewater treatment plant in terms of restoring capacity to reduce the chance of odours.
There's no projects in the LTP. It's the work that will be undertaken to restore the treatment filters is the key.
Okay. Councillor Henstock, please.
Thank you. Just in time,
Then
Mary.
I'm going to put it.
I just wanted to acknowledge, thank you, Mary, for picking up on the discrepancy in time between those columns and the health, safety and wellbeing aspect, because I picked it up as well. What we can't see from here, though, is where the variance is. We don't know what the figures were for the corresponding periods. And I think the least we can expect in these reports is the variance being shown to us and being provided numbers like this without that indication of variance is meaningless. So I'd like to just make a request, please, that for future reporting, we actually have the details from the previous corresponding period in order that we can see the variance, because it's our job as governors to be looking at risk. And we can't assess risk if we can't see where the trends are. So that's my plea, that we include the variance reporting for the corresponding periods. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cotter?
Look, just a quick one. In the ponds by the adventure park there, the first flush basin, it says here in 5.1, page 89, that you've removed sediment and you're actually doubling the size of it. So was that additional to the initial design, or was that always planned to do that?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I don't know if it was allowed for but not done.
Okay.
I don't know, but there was an opportunity in the area that we had to be able to make that site a lot bigger.
Okay.
It's probably more than double actually.
And the other thing is, I don't know about you, Phil, but I'm kind of missing in the old format. You had all the pump stations and the ponds and all that work that we were doing, the stop banks, the project program delivery, and the costings next to them, and where they were on the delivery. Is there any reason that you've taken that out? Is it an onerous? Oh, Brent.
If I could just comment on, and Gavin mentioned it to start with, what we've tried to do is we were double reporting a whole lot of stuff. You were getting information every month on key projects,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of other things through the PMO reports. And we've tried to come up with a more of a standardised format, which Transport will also use, and the other major units that you haven't been hearing from on a quarterly basis. So this isn't the final format, but what we would like is feedback from the councillors. Compare this to what we used to provide, which was actually quite huge, and took a lot of time to produce. Is saying, is there anything specific that's missing that you actually want put back in, as Councillor Henstock and yourself has raised?
Okay, good.
And are you happy for the capital just to be continued to be reported monthly through the PMO reports? It could be a simplified version of what we're currently doing and what's coming up. But any feedback that would feed into the reformatting of these quarterly reports, because we want to make them meaningful for you, but also not a double up on what you're already getting.
And also meaningful for the public, because I thought those projects were really good to actually, because we'd look at it and you go, the council's doing heaps here in the water areas, so I'd like to see those come back if it's not too onerous.
Thank you. Actually, Tim, the tiny bit I do know about the one at the Adventure Park, it was all designed as big, but we council only did part of it, and then we finished the other bit off.
Oh, right, yeah.
So it was always in there for being that large.
Yeah, I wasn't across that detail. The other thing on the capital projects that information that we had in the previous report was because of the timing of when the report was created and then presented alongside the PMO reporting, the numbers were also different, which we then get called out on. So it's trying to get a balance of.
Okay, Councillor Timpton, and then we might.
When it comes to information about our Three Waters program, I think the information that we got in our drinking water supply as part of the LTP workshops was incredibly valuable. I think that not just looking at the past and things we have done, but actually looking at the forward work program in each of those three water spaces and the expected impact of each of those sort of programs of work is really important for us to see what's coming up and the value of those projects, not just what we've already done. So that would be my feedback on the reporting.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, we've heard enough positive, no negative, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. And that debate as well. That's great. Okay, so we'll now whip into public excluded. Can I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Fields, Councillor Henstock, thank you. And we'll do the minutes.
So we just go ahead and do that at 3. So we'll do insurance subcommittee.
Yeah.
And then do the middle protocols at 3.
Okay. So we'll just